Chapter 23-22. Ling Han had already reached the second secret late stage. Now with this supplement, he directly made it to the second secret peak stage. He swallowed 1,000-year one dream pill and entered the river of time. Since there were rules of time in the foreign domain, there would naturally be a river of time as well. However, one could only enter this place with the Millennium Dream Pill, or a celestial venerable could force his way in. However, even a celestial venerable could not match the power of heaven and earth. Once he left the river of time, all his memories would be erased. The past and present could not be reversed, and the future could not be changed. Ling Han comprehended the Tao in the land of time termination. There was no concept of time here. An instant could pass through endless years, and endless years could be just a second in the outside world. This was the unit of time that Ling Han had learned from Wally. He had already accepted and used it. Compared to the time it took for an incense stick to burn, or a heartbeat to measure time, minutes and seconds were much more accurate, down to milliseconds and microseconds. In this place, Ling Han easily broke through to the third secret. However, he didn't immediately return to his body. Instead, he continued to comprehend. Only when the medicinal effects of the 1,000 years dream pill were completely exhausted did his divine sense return to his body. The heavenly tribulation came immediately. He went to undergo the heavenly tribulation. After a day, he landed and easily passed it. In reality, his realm had already reached the third secret middle stage. The essence contained in Serene Source's wings was truly astonishing. He had not used up all of its essence previously. Moreover, he comprehended the Tao for a while longer in the land of time termination. It seemed like just a while, but in reality, the time that had passed was endless. Thus, after undergoing the heavenly tribulation, he completely absorbed and refined the remaining essence in his body, and his cultivation directly reached the third secret middle stage. When he returned to his residence, he immediately received a notice from the academy that he had obtained the qualification to participate in the Battle of 1,000 Academies. Was there any point in playing this game over and over again? Ling Han knew that the academy had realized that he had defeated Serene Source in a battle at the same level, so they had firmly placed their bets on him. Even if Ling Han could not bring the academy a good ranking this time, no one would be able to stop Ling Han in the next tournament. As a person, of course, one had to look further. If it was in the immortal region, Ling Han would definitely throw up his hands and quit. Fuck. Who do you think I am, coming and going at your beck and call? However, right now they were in the other side, so Ling Han didn't act willfully. He wanted to understand the foreign domain's martial art system, so that he could target it in the future. He also wanted to know what kind of level the young geniuses of the foreign domain had reached. If they could become Empyreans, should he find a chance to get rid of them in advance? Furthermore, he discovered that the wings of the angel race were existences akin to immortal medicines. If he ate more chicken wings, his cultivation would skyrocket, so why not go and get more? This kind of effect was likely only available to the angel race at the Emperor star level, and it was pitifully rare. As such, it could only be seen in the 1,000 Academy competition. If the Academy knew that he only agreed to go because he wanted to eat chicken wings, those old fellows would probably be so angry that their eyes would spit fire. A few days later, the 10 prodigies set off under the lead of 2 9 Lotus elites from the Academy, heading towards the 4 Splendor Academy. The 1,000 Academy competition this time would be held in the 4 Splendor Academy, but the two places were separated by an immeasurable distance. If they only relied on flying to travel, it would probably take tens of thousands of years. However, though they set off ahead of time, they only had 100 years' time, and definitely couldn't pass just like that. What to do? Transport formations, of course. There were transport formations everywhere in the other side, infinitely shortening the distance between the two places. However, because the 4 Splendor Academy was really too far, even if they used the transport formations, it would still take about 30 years. That was because they couldn't take another transport formation after exiting, and they still had to travel a distance. The team of 10 was still made up of Serene Source, and the 9 who won through the preliminary selection. The ascending origin tier leaders were called Abyss and 7 Frost. Abyss was an insect, while Seven Frost was a saint beast. The reason why they didn't let the angel race or demon race be the leaders was naturally because of the conflict between Ling Han and Serene Source. They wanted to avoid being biased and ultimately causing the team to break up. They sped up and arrived at a city after a dozen or so days. Then they used the transport formation for the first time. Traveling through space, they very quickly arrived at another city, but they didn't immediately hurry on their way. Using long-distance transport formations actually had extremely negative effects on the body. Their physical bodies were in an extremely unstable state, and if they continued to use the transport formation, death was a small matter. The key was that it would collapse and explode, destroying the transport formation and the transport tunnel, and causing devastating damage to others. Wally also followed. He disguised himself as a small pendant and hung it on the corner of Ling Han's clothes. We can't use the transport formation continuously, because in the process of traveling through space, it will affect the stability of atoms and cause chaos in the nuclear electrons, which is very likely to turn the human body into a supernuclear weapon, he explained. You have to know that actually each of our existences is a product of heaven and earth. The power of heaven and earth is always in our bodies, but ordinary people can't activate it at all. According to the theory of high-level planes, every time we lose a gram of mass, we can explode with an energy tide that can destroy a celestial body. You can imagine how terrifying our potential is. No wonder they couldn't use the transport formation continuously. It could turn a person into a terrifying weapon. According to what you said, if we can use the power of heaven and earth, then even a stone we casually pick up will be able to explode with endless power. Ling Han asked. That's right. Wally nodded. Those who can use the power of heaven and earth to a certain extent are your so-called celestial venerables. Therefore, the strength of a celestial venerables could completely crush a celestial king. Even a ninth heaven celestial king could only die a horrible death in front of a celestial venerables. The power used by both parties was not on the same level at all. Ling Han deeply felt that cooperating with Wally was a very smart thing to do. He had obtained all the knowledge of high-level planes, and knowledge was the core wealth of a plane. Martial art techniques were actually a kind of knowledge that taught you how to use the rules. After they rested for 3 days, they once again used the transport formation in the city and arrived at another city. This time, they did not rest again, but continued to travel out of the city. This was because the next transport formation was in a very distant place, and the time spent on the journey was enough for them to get rid of the negative effects of teleportation. Just like that, they walked and stopped along the way, resting for a few days from time to time as they traveled through the vast world of the foreign land. No one wasted any time. At their level, they could even cultivate while walking or sleeping, but the efficiency would be slightly lower. 10 years later, they had already traveled an endless distance, and their speed was also faster than they had expected. They had already traveled half the distance, and if everything went smoothly, they would only need another 10 years to reach Sihua Academy. On this day, they came out of the transport formation and went to find a place to stay. The next transport formation was in this city, so they did not need to travel anymore and could have a good rest. However, they found that this city was unusually lively. Chapter 23-24. Does your esteemed shop have a way to refine the blood of an ancestral king? Ling Han asked. No. The old man shook his head, and then added, this is a kind of secret technique, and is only in the hands of a few forces. However, you don't have to mind it. After all, there isn't that much ancestral king blood in this world. True, which ancestral king would have nothing better to do and release blood all day long? Ling Han, however, thought. There were at least 100 ancestral king corpses that could be used in the Black Tower. What kind of astonishing wealth was that? Furthermore, Ling Han didn't plan to sell the ancestral king blood either. Instead, he wanted to keep it for his own use, so he naturally wanted the method to refine it even more. Do you plan to exchange this bottle of ancestral king blood for starstones, or exchange it with other items? The old man asked. If it's the former, we will charge a 15% processing fee, And if it's the latter, then you have to pay us 100,000 star stones as a reward. The latter, Ling Han said, and directly tossed out a spatial god tool, and then took out some star stones. There were exactly 100,000 left. Then what do you want to exchange for? The old man asked. He naturally hoped that Ling Han would choose the former. The price of an ancestral king blood was definitely at least 100 million star stones. Ling Han didn't hesitate and said, the method to refine ancestral king blood. The old man was surprised. He had already said it so clearly, so why was Ling Han still fixated on it? A thought flashed in his mind, and he couldn't help but suck in a breath, and said, you have more than one portion of ancestral king blood? This number definitely wouldn't be small. Otherwise, so what if you exchange for the method to refine it? The increased value wouldn't be able to make up for this portion of ancestral king blood, and it would still be a loss. You have an ancestral king in your family, right? You can put some blood if you want. Though he thought so in his heart, he naturally couldn't ask that out loud. A businessman shouldn't be too curious. However, he still added and said, if you have more ancestral king blood, you can let us help you sell it. If there are more, we can lower the processing fee. Furthermore, when doing business in our auction house, your identity information is absolutely confidential, so you don't have to worry about encountering any trouble. Ling Han just smiled. Firstly, he had too much ancestral king blood, and it was impossible for him to auction it all off. Secondly, how could he trust someone so easily? Oh, since he said it was a secret, it was definitely a secret. Of course, now that he was in disguise, he was not afraid of others knowing that the ancestral monarch blood came from him. Most importantly, he really did need the ancestral king's blood, and the empress and the others also needed it. No amount of it would be too much. The old man tried to persuade him a few more times, but Ling Han had no intention of changing his mind. However, he left some leeway. If this cooperation went well, he might put the second portion of the ancestral king's blood up for auction. After everything was settled, Ling Han was invited to a private room. Although 100,000 star stones wasn't considered a lot of business for the auction house, the things that Ling Han had taken out were too precious. Therefore, he was treated like a VIP. The interior of the auction house used the law of space, forming its own grotto heaven. Its structure was no different from an ordinary auction house, but its size was more than 100 times larger, and it could accommodate millions of people. Ling Han sat in a private room, and the view was very good, showing the importance that the auction house attached to him. Not long after, the auction officially began. Wally changed back to his human form and sat beside Ling Han. His intelligence had just been awakened, and he was learning at a high speed. It was just that in the past, he was learning about the knowledge of the higher planes, and now he was learning how to be a human. He was very engrossed. It was said that he could activate a kind of mode and capture the voices and expressions of everyone present at the same time. Then, he would analyze and calculate for his learning purposes. Ling Han, on the other hand, focused his attention on the auction items. He couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this curious baby. At the beginning, the auction items were all very ordinary. As Ling Han listened, he couldn't help but yawn. Only when the celestial medicine appeared did he become spirited. Although it wasn't very old, since it was a celestial medicine, it was extremely precious and could be used to concoct pills. Ling Han naturally made a move. He was definitely rich and overbearing. This was the wealth of over 100 ancestral kings. Although those ancestral kings couldn't possibly bring all of their wealth, just a small portion would be enough to rival a country. As long as it was a celestial medicine, he didn't care about its age and what kind of pills it could be used to concoct. In one sentence, he would buy. Seeing that he was so rich and overbearing, the people in the other private rooms below all frequently came over to his private room, as if they wanted to know who exactly the rich person in this private room was. Ling Han's mischievous thoughts immediately arose. With a thought, he immediately turned into Serene Yuan's appearance, and then turned off the formation in the private room. This could form a boundary, and outsiders couldn't use their divine senses to probe in. Of course, their eyes couldn't see through it either. Immediately, his appearance was displayed in front of everyone. Huh. Serene Yuan was also very curious about this mysterious person, but he didn't turn his head frequently. Instead, after everyone made all sorts of sounds, he turned his head back for a glance. Then he was indescribably shocked. This person actually looked exactly like him. However, he didn't pay too much attention to it. The foreign land was too big, and there were so many people. It wasn't rare for similar things to happen. How arrogant. Someone sneered, not used to Ling Han spending so much. It seemed like everyone else was inferior to him. He doesn't flaunt his wealth. Is he trying to get people to rob him? Haha, I say everyone, let's not bid and compete. Later we just need to rob this guy. Ling Han laughed out loud, and his expression was extremely arrogant. If you want to rob me, first know who you are and measure your own strength. Also, if you can't find me, feel free to come to 100 Battle Academy. I'm called Serene Yuan. Uft. Serene Yuan almost coughed up blood. If this person was called Serene Yuan, then it could be said to be a coincidence. But if he was also in 100 Battle Academy, then that wasn't right. There was only one Serene Yuan in the academy, and that was him, the only Emperor star before. Did he have a grudge against this person? He actually purposely dug a hole for him. Let alone him. Even Deep Yuan and 7th Frost frowned. This person had bid for so many immortal medicines in one go. Such a shocking amount of wealth would naturally cause people to be envious. Now that he purposely pretended to be Serene Yuan, who knew how much trouble he would cause for their group. This person was too sinister. He purposely opened the barrier and exposed his fake identity, so that the trouble would be directed to someone else. After Ling Han was arrogant enough, he opened the formation again. While he thought strangely, his grasp of knowledge was many times greater than any grand scholar. But when it came to scheming, he was a complete layman. He couldn't understand why Ling Han would do this. His understanding of the world came from calculations. But what happened now was something that he couldn't figure out no matter how he calculated. The auction continued. After a whole 5 days, it was finally the finale. Sorry to keep everyone waiting. The auctioneer pressed his hand. Originally, this shop only had one portion of ancestral king blood for sale. But because of some special circumstances, there is now another portion. When everyone heard this, they all revealed expressions of excitement. Now there were 2 portions of ancestral king blood. However, the auctioneer paused. The second portion of ancestral king blood has not been refined. Chapter 23-25. The moment he said that, at least 99% of the people immediately shook their heads. Without refining it, how could it be used? If one directly swallowed it, it would be equivalent to letting the ancestral king's attack explode within their body. Who could endure it? Even if they rubbed it on their body, they wouldn't be able to endure it. The ancestral king's aura was too tyrannical, its destructive power astonishing. However, the remaining less than 1% of the martial artists revealed excited expressions. The competition for the unrefined ancestral king blood would definitely be limited, and the transaction price would be far from being comparable to the refined one. Obtaining a similar treasure at a relatively small price was naturally a great profit. They grasped the method to refine the ancestral king's blood. Got it. Hurry up and start, someone urged. That's right. Hurry up and start. The auctioneer didn't continue to whet his appetite. Instead, he said, however, the owner of this ancestral king's blood doesn't want to auction the star stones. Instead, he wants to exchange it for the method of refining the ancestral king's blood. Many people looked at each other in dismay. Someone actually used the ancestral king's blood to exchange for the refining method. Hiss! If it wasn't for the fact that the other party still had a large amount of ancestral king's blood, who would do such a stupid thing? However, an ancestral king was practically invincible. Who could capture an ancestral king and extract his blood? Everyone was baffled, and they were even more curious. They wanted to grab the seller and ask him about it. Some people turned their attention to the auction house. As long as they put pressure on the auction house, they would definitely expose the seller. It couldn't be helped because this guess was too shocking. Actually using ancestral king blood to exchange for the method to refine it. If it wasn't for the fact that there was an astonishing amount of ancestral king blood, who would believe it? Ling Han didn't care what the others thought. After all, he was using his disguised appearance to conduct the transaction. He was full of confidence in the deceiving the heavens technique. Moreover, the people who would participate in the auction would definitely not be the ancestral king. Do ancestral kings still need ancestral king blood? Yes, there was still a huge difference in levels between the ancestral kings, but they were incomparably similar in nature. Consuming the blood of other ancestral kings had almost no benefits, or else the ancestral kings would have long been in chaos. Immediately, many people secretly contacted the auctioneer, wanting to use their refining method to exchange for the ancestral king's blood. As for the auction house, they presented the effects of each refining method to Ling Han for him to refer to and choose from. In fact, this kind of secret technique was not too precious, because there was almost no chance to refine the ancestral king's blood. Grasping it or not would not affect the fate of a family or a force. That was why so many people were willing to exchange for it. For others, the value of a portion of ancestral king blood was much higher. Ling Han read through the introduction of each refining method. All of them had obvious advantages and disadvantages. For example, a method with a high conversion rate would require the use of more immortal medicines. If converted, the costs would not be low at all. As for a method with low consumption, the conversion rate would be pitifully low. After refining a portion of ancestral king blood, one would only be able to obtain a third of it. Ling Han thought about it and decided to choose a technique with a high conversion rate. He would rather spend more immortal medicine since he had money anyway. After he made his choice, the bottle of ancestral king's blood fell into the hands of an expert. That person took the bottle and smiled. "This seller, if you have more ancestral king's blood, you can contact me. I live on the west side of this town, in the Horse King Inn. I will wait for you for 3 days. He did not know who the seller was, so he did not know who he was talking to. It was as if he was talking to the air. Ling Han pretended not to hear. He had already obtained the refining method of ancestral king's blood. So how could he give it to someone else? "Give it to me," Vale suddenly said. Ling Han handed over a jade stone in his hand. The refining method was recorded inside. He had already memorized it. Even if Vale did not return the memory crystal, he would not be afraid. Vale took it and placed it on his forehead. After a while he said, "According to my deduction, this technique can still be improved. The conversion rate can be increased to 97%. Also, the consumption of materials can be reduced by a third." Ling Han could not help but be overjoyed. He did not doubt that Vale was lying. This guy did not learn this technique at all. "Then hurry up and start." Vale nodded and said, "I need 5 days, 6 hours, 39 minutes and 11 seconds. After he finished speaking, he closed his eyes. Rays of light rose from his body, and he had already entered the state of deduction. Ling Han waited patiently. The next step was the refined ancestral king's blood. He had originally wanted to bid for it, but when he thought about how much ancestral king's blood he had on him, it was not wise to bid with these people. He might have to pay a premium of 10 times or even more. So why bother? He had a lot of money, but it was not to the point where he could squander it as he pleased. The competition was unexpectedly fierce. Ancestral king's blood was really too rare. It was almost the same as celestial king grade medicine. Of course, its effects were also incomparably outstanding. Thus, this kind of intense competition seemed to be reasonable. Wuxia, Senfeng Yu Yuan, and the others were all shouting out bids. It was as if they were not star stones, but completely worthless ordinary stones. There were many people who were crazier than them. Very soon, they had no choice but to withdraw from the competition. "Pool up the money, then we can discuss how to split the ancestral king's blood," Yu Yuan immediately said. They began to pool up the money. However, they only participated in the bidding 3 times before they ran out of money again. At this moment, they could no longer care about the discord between the angels and the devils. They pooled the money of the entire team. Lin Yuan and Seven Frost even offered up all their belongings. However, it was still not enough. Everyone had gone mad. Yu Yuan gritted his teeth. He took out a stock of immortal medicine and said, I'll add this as well. It was a stalk of grass that was less than half a foot tall. It was entirely green and seemed to be forged from jade. Upon closer inspection, one could see patterns on its leaves. However, one could not tell what they were exactly. 9 Lotus Great Immortal Medicine. 7 Frost immediately said. Then the jade dragon grass. Yu Yuan nodded. This is what my family gave me to use when I attempt to reach the 9 Lotus stage. However, reaching the 9 Lotus stage is a piece of cake for me. The 11 Leaf stage, on the other hand, is a challenge. If it were not for the 11 Leaf stage, he would have reached the 9 Lotus stage a long time ago. After all, he was at the peak of the 5 Leaf stage. He could take this step at any time. However, he was ambitious. Naturally, he would not be satisfied with 6 or 7 leaves. He had to reach the 11 Leaf stage. Naturally, a 9 Lotus Great Immortal Medicine was precious. After some discussion, the seller agreed to exchange the jade dragon grass for the price. After paying such a hefty price, the ancestral king's blood finally fell into the hands of Yu Yuan and the others. He was not the only one. 7 Frost, Yuan Gentle Wind, and the others had also paid for it. This was the last item to be auctioned. After it was sold, the auction came to an end. However, many people sneered. They would not give up so easily. They were still eyeing the seller of the first ancestral king's blood. They were going to pressure the auction house to reveal the seller's identity. Ling Han chuckled and had Wally turn back into a pendant, which he hung on his own clothes. Then he walked out in a dignified manner. He had already transformed into the image of a member of the demon tribe, who would be able to associate him with the angel tribe from before. Chapter 23-26. After Yu Yuan and the others obtained the ancestral king's blood, they naturally left the auction house as soon as they could, using the transportation formation to get far away. Although they had 2 9 Lotus elites among them, who knew how many others were eyeing the ancestral king's blood, this was definitely not a place to linger for long. Ling Han returned to the group. Although everyone was curious as to where he had gone, they definitely could not link him to the person who had caused trouble and the seller of the ancestral king's blood. In other words, how could Ling Han have such great wealth? They arrived at the transportation formation, and with a flash of light, their figures disappeared. Fuck, we're a step too late. A group of 5 chased after them, all with 9 lotuses on their foreheads. Where did those people go just now? One of them asked the manservant in charge of the transportation formation. They went to Wild Cloud City, the manservant said, his voice trembling. He felt as if his legs were fighting. Quick, teleport us to Wild Cloud City as well, another 9 Lotus elite said. The manservant's face was full of difficulty. My 5 lords, they haven't finished teleporting yet. If we activate the teleportation now, the spatial passageway might be destroyed, and we don't know where we will appear. One of the 9 Lotus elites attacked, directly smashing the manservant's head into mush. He turned to the other manservant and said, "He's not obedient. What about you?" I'll listen. The manservant hurriedly went to activate the transportation formation. The transportation formation was activated, and after a flash of light, the 5 of them disappeared. But after a short while, there was a loud bang, and the transportation formation actually exploded. The power of space fluctuated, practically flattening the entire town. Meanwhile, in the spatial passageway, Ling Han and the others all trembled violently. The space fluctuated violently, causing them to lose their balance and sway continuously. Not good, the spatial passageway is about to explode. Immediately tear open the space and escape. 7th Frost and Yuan were both pale with fright. If the spatial passageway really exploded, and the destructive energy surged through, no one would be able to escape except for the ancestral king. The 2 9 Lotus elites hurriedly used all their strength and tore open a gap in the spatial passageway. The group hurriedly flew out. But what was a space tunnel? Traveling 1 zhang in this place might be equivalent to tens of thousands of li in the outside world. This was the only way to save time on the road. Therefore, everyone ran out at different times. If there was a slight difference, they would appear in the outside world far away. Ling Han naturally grabbed Hunyeo and the other 2 girls in his hands. Even if it didn't work out, he would still put the 3 girls into the Black Tower. But a spatial god tool was out of the question. It was extremely possible that it would suddenly explode. And if a spatial god tool exploded in the void, who knew where the people and things inside would go? Shio shio shio. One by one, they were flung out of the void tunnel. Everyone was separated by an immeasurable distance. Ha 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 ha. Yu Yuan suddenly laughed. He was currently in a small valley, and his surroundings were quiet. Just this alone wouldn't make him so excited. However, that bottle of ancestral king blood was on him. He had paid the greatest price, so the ancestral king blood was handed over to him for safekeeping. Everyone decided to use the teleportation formation to escape to another place. Once they had completely shaken off their pursuers, they would decide how to split the ancestral king's blood, and how much each of them should get. However, now that everyone was gone, he naturally didn't need to share the ancestral king blood with others. After all, the explosion of the space tunnel could destroy anything. It wouldn't be strange to have an extra bottle of ancestral king blood, right? Tyrant, you mustn't die, he said with a menacing gaze. He uncorked the bottle without hesitation and smeared the ancestral king blood on his body. He opened his pores and absorbed the essence power within. At his current cultivation level, he couldn't directly consume the ancestral king blood. Instead, he had to absorb it through his skin. Otherwise, even if it was refined, it could still easily cause him to explode. He wanted to reach the 11-leaf stage immediately. Once he took this step, his battle prowess would soar to the 9-lotus realm. At that time, killing Ling Han would be a piece of cake. Once, twice, thrice. He only smeared a little bit of the ancestral king blood each time. If he used too much, it would be akin to suicide. Moreover, if he used too much, the essence of the ancestral king blood would quickly dissipate, resulting in a huge waste. He had long since reached the peak stage of the 10-leaf stage. Every time he absorbed the ancestral king blood, his accumulation would deepen. When there were only a few drops of ancestral king blood left in the bottle, a terrifying aura instantly surged from his body. It roared like an ocean. Pung pung pung. As the aura swept past, the rocks in the surroundings were shattered. Thunderclouds gathered in the sky. The heavenly tribulation had arrived. He had taken the final step of the immortal palace tier and advanced to the 11th secret. As long as he survived the heavenly tribulation, his cultivation level would be comparable to that of an ascending origin tier cultivator. Even if the gap of 3 minor levels in the ascending origin tier was astonishingly large, the battle prowess of the Emperor Star was enough to defeat those in the ascending origin tier in the initial tier. Come, come. Yu Yuan laughed maniacally. He leaped into the air and took the initiative to attack the heavenly tribulation. He couldn't hold back anymore. After surviving the heavenly tribulation, he would search for Ling Han. He would take advantage of the fact that the others hadn't gathered to tear that detestable person into pieces. Not far away, the 5-9 Lotus Realm experts turned their gazes over. Someone's transcending the heavenly tribulation. Could it be that those people used the ancestral king blood, and that's why they're breaking through? Fuck, we have to rush over immediately. These 5 people were, of course, the culprits who had forcefully activated the teleportation formation and caused the spatial passageway to collapse. They were unscathed because they were all at the 9 Lotus level. They quickly gathered together and continued to search for the whereabouts of the 100 Battle Academy members. They flew over and arrived at the valley where Yu Yuan had survived the heavenly tribulation. This is the 9 Lotus Great Tribulation. Strange. I clearly don't feel any qualitative change in my soul power. Gasp. The 5 people exclaimed in unison. 8 Lotus 11 Leaf. Only an 8 Lotus 11 Leaf cultivator would have battle prowess that soared to the 9 Lotus level without any change in soul power. That's right. Yu Yuan landed. He had already survived the heavenly tribulation. He swept his gaze over them and calmly said, "The spatial passageway wouldn't explode for no reason. Is it because of you guys?" He was the Emperor Star. Not only was he astonishingly talented in martial art, but his intelligence was naturally top-notch as well. If he was still a 10-leaf cultivator, he would have no choice but to flee. However, he's an 11-leaf cultivator now. His cultivation base is comparable to a 9-lotus cultivator, and his combat strength can even suppress a peak 1-leaf 9-lotus cultivator. Naturally, he's confident he can obtain the ancestral king blood. Isn't this guy the arrogant good-for-nothing at the auction house? Someone recognized Yu Yuan. Yes, it's this guy. The 5 people were overjoyed. They wondered how many immortal herbs this guy had obtained. Although they were not as valuable as the ancestral king blood, they were still tempting. Haha, this is a gift from the heavens to us. They spread out and surrounded Serene Origin in the middle. Yu Yuan's face couldn't help but twitch. Just who was that bastard who framed him? If he really obtained so many immortal medicines, then he would accept it. The key was that he had to take the blame for someone else for no reason. This really made him feel very unhappy. Hand over the immortal herbs and the ancestral king blood. The 5 people said coldly. We can still leave your corpse intact. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 23-28. Now, Serene Yuan was no longer as calm and confident as before. Instead, he looked like a refugee. His clothes were tattered, and if it were not for his shocking aura, Ling Han would have thought that he was an impersonator. Ling Han chuckled. So what if I'm a good son? Did I end up on the streets and was forced to sell my body? It's not beneficial for you to talk big now, Serene Yuan said darkly. He had been hiding from the 5-9 Lotus elites for so many years. However, an Emperor Star was an Emperor Star, and he naturally had an indomitable will. Hence, this kind of pursuit did not make him depressed. Instead, his fighting spirit rose. He believed that he would be able to cultivate the 8 Lotus to perfection in no time, and then advance to the 9 Lotus. Those 5 people were only whetstones to make him stronger. Of course, he was also very depressed. He was made a scapegoat for no reason. He released his aura, and the might of an 11-leaf cultivator surged out like a heavenly demon overlord. Ling Han was shocked, and he said, I didn't expect you to advance to the 11-leaf stage. No wonder you're so confident. Oh, you used that bottle of ancestral king blood, right? Serene Yuan's expression changed slightly when he heard this. Something that belongs to everyone was used by you alone. You're really selfish, Ling Han said calmly. What do you know? Serene Yuan scoffed. I'm an Emperor Star, and the ancestral king blood is most effective on me. Otherwise, giving it to someone else would be a waste. That's someone else's business. You're using someone else's thing, and yet you're acting so shamelessly. Ha, I can't stand you. Ling Han wagged a finger at him. Serene Yuan was furious. His original intention was to tease Ling Han, and only kill him after he was satisfied with Ling Han. However, this guy did not seem to have a brain, and still dared to argue with him at a time like this. You're seeking death. He attacked brazenly. Boom! A terrifying aura surged out. This was a supreme elite of the 9 Lotus level. Whether in the celestial realm or the foreign realm, ascending origin tier cultivators could be called elites. Even in a 9th heaven celestial king tier force, they could be considered elites. Now Serene Source possessed the battle prowess of 9 Lotus. With a single move, the winds and clouds howled, and even the heavens paled. Ling Han let out a long roar, and clenched his fist to meet the attack. You don't know what's good for you. Yu Yuan sneered. You actually dared to fight me head-on? You must be crazy. Bam! In the exchange of blows, Ling Han was instantly sent flying. However, he immediately twisted his body and landed on the ground. He stood firmly, and aside from his slightly flushed face, there was not the slightest bit of abnormality on him. Who asked him to have obtained countless celestial medicines, and added with the refinement of the blood of the ancestral king, he had pushed the indestructible heaven scroll to a level that was compatible with his cultivation level. It was enough to withstand the attacks of ascending origin tier. Yu Yuan's eyes couldn't help but bulge out. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. You're at the 10-leaf stage. He almost shouted. Are you fucking human? After spending 1,000,000 years, he had only risen from the 4-leaf stage to the 10-leaf stage. Moreover, the academy had provided him with countless cultivation resources. But Ling Han? It had only been 50 years, and yet, he was already at the 10-leaf stage. This was something he couldn't believe. Even if Ling Han had used the time cultivation room of the highest grade, it was already inconceivable that he could raise his cultivation level by 1 or 2 leaves in such a short amount of time. Unless, of course, there was an ancestral king who was willing to sacrifice his own cultivation base. However, which ancestral king would be so foolish as to sacrifice his own cultivation base, just so an 8-lotus cultivator could raise his cultivation base by 1 or 2 leaves? You didn't expect this, did you? Ling Han chuckled. Impossible. This is impossible. Yu Yuan roared. He couldn't accept this. Ling Han sighed. A piece of trash like you is already at the 11-leaf stage. And yet, I'm only at the 10-leaf stage. The heavens are truly unfair. When Yu Yuan heard Ling Han's complaints, he was enraged. He was a 10-leaf cultivator to begin with. He had only raised his cultivation base by 1 minor stage. In comparison, Ling Han's cultivation base was like a huge explosion. How did you raise your cultivation base? Yu Yuan asked after calming down. He wanted to know Ling Han's secret. That's none of your business. Ling Han scoffed. Unless he was absolutely confident that he could kill Yu Yuan, he would never reveal his secret to Yu Yuan. Yu Yuan took a deep breath. It's fine if you don't tell me. When I capture you and search your soul, you won't be able to hide any of your secrets from me. Although he was only 1 minor stage higher than Ling Han, there was a qualitative leap from the 10-leaf stage to the 11-leaf stage. Why had he been stuck at this stage for so many years? It was because after he took this step, his battle prowess shot up to the 9-lotus level. Otherwise, an 8-lotus cultivator would only be an 8-lotus cultivator. Hence, he had absolute confidence in his victory. Ling Han drew all the women into the Black Tower. Yu Yuan was a powerful enemy, and he couldn't guarantee that he would be able to guard all the women flawlessly when he was in a fierce battle with him. In the first place, one could only be a thief for 1,000 days. So how could one guard against a thief for 1,000 days? Come, I'll play with you. He crooked a finger at Yu Yuan. You have a death wish. Yu Yuan attacked. Boom. His 9-lotus battle prowess surged. He was like a great demon god. Ling Han met the attack head-on. He didn't evade. Instead, he chose to face Yu Yuan head-on. Boom. Boom. Naturally, Yu Yuan was stronger. The leap from the 10-leaf stage to the 11-leaf stage was too great. Even though Ling Han had merged the regulations of the 2 realms, and his battle prowess had surpassed the Emperor's star, it was useless. He couldn't close the gap. Fortunately, his physique was strong enough. He only spat out a mouthful of blood after being knocked back more than 100 times by Yu Yuan. His defense had reached a frightening level. Yu Yuan was speechless. However, he was even more curious about Ling Han's secrets. If he could master all of Ling Han's strengths, he would definitely become the most powerful Emperor star. He laughed loudly and attacked even more ferociously. Ling Han attacked without restraint. His cultivation base was improving too quickly. It was inevitable that his foundation wasn't strong enough. However, fighting an elite like Yu Yuan would undoubtedly improve his battle prowess. In a real battle, his mastery of the regulations would quickly improve. Hey, why isn't your wing back yet? Ling Han pointed at one of Yu Yuan's wings. He had severed it before this. Although it had grown back, it was only the size of a chicken's wing. It was pitifully small. It's not enough for me. He feigned pity. Yu Yuan was enraged. Ling Han's strength was monstrous, and his defenses were monstrous. However, nothing could compare to Yu Yuan's mouth. He could anger someone to death. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Yu Yuan roared angrily. He attacked even more ferociously. If he didn't kill Ling Han with his own hands, he wouldn't be able to take this lying down. In his rage, his battle prowess increased by a large margin. Unfortunately, Ling Han's body was tough. His body was still riddled with wounds. Ling Han fought a bloody battle. His fighting spirit was also blazing, and he was using serene source to temper himself. It's about time. After fighting for 10 days, Ling Han revealed a crazed smile and took out a bottle. Even eating immortal medicine is useless. Yu Yuan said. Ling Han's body was not indestructible. Under Yu Yuan's crazy attacks, Ling Han's body had already reached a critical point. As long as Yu Yuan continued to attack, he would definitely be able to break through. Ling Han pulled out the cork and poured the crimson blood onto himself. Ant's ancestral king blood. Yu Yuan's eyes immediately bulged. Chapter 23-29. Of course, Serene Yuan was shocked. He had emptied his entire fortune to obtain a portion of ancestral king's blood. But Ling Han could also take out a portion. If it wasn't for the fact that Ling Han's bottle was too full, he would have suspected that Ling Han had used some trick to steal the bottle in his spatial god tool. Otherwise, how could he have obtained a bottle of ancestral king's blood? No. He shuddered. When this ancestral king's blood was poured over him, an aura that was like smoke rising from Ling Han's whole body. It surged skywards and turned into all kinds of shapes and symbols. This scene was too astonishing. It was as if an ancestral king was about to materialize from his blood. This ancestral king's blood essence, he said in shock. He felt his heart contract violently, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Ling Han smiled slightly. You have a good eye. Serene Yuan couldn't help but feel pained. Ancestral king's blood essence was too precious, and could be used miraculously even in Nine Lotus. Even an ancestral king didn't have much blood essence, and it was equivalent to the most precious part of a celestial medicine. He glared at Ling Han hatefully. Before he came, Ling Han was already his, so everything on Ling Han was his. In other words, Ling Han had used up his ancestral king's blood essence. Damn 10,000 times. Every step Nine Lotus took, even for an emperor star like him, would take hundreds of millions or even billions of years. If he had a bottle of ancestral king's blood essence, he could compress the time by half or more. How could he not feel? You really know how to worry. Ling Han shook his head and casually sprinkled. Instantly, there were many more bottles on the ground. He opened them one by one, and then put them back into the Black Tower. Serene Yuan's expression went from shock to numbness, because these bottles were all ancestral king's blood. And there were even 2 bottles of blood essence. When Ling Han put all the bottles into the Black Tower, Serene Yuan's gaze became astonishingly hot. There were actually 2 bottles of ancestral king's blood essence? They were his. Tyrant, I have to thank you for giving me such a great opportunity, Serene Source said proudly. Sigh, even though you're very sincere in calling me dad, I still have to leave these things for my own son. I'm not interested in people like you. Ling Han chuckled. He did not mind teasing Serene Source again. Serene Origin's gaze was cold. A sharp tongue won't help you at all. Bite me. Ling Han laughed. I'll kill you. Yu Yuan attacked. He impatiently wanted to kill Ling Han and take all of his treasures. Even without the ancestral king blood essence, just the amount of ancestral king blood essence was enough to make him go crazy. This time, Ling Han did not take the attack head-on. Instead, he used his movement technique to dodge. He was absorbing the ancestral king's essence blood's energy, wanting to break through in a short period of time. The ancestral king's essence blood could no longer help him, because the amount of ancestral king's essence blood he had refined was too large, and his body had a great resistance. However, the ancestral king's essence blood was extremely violent, and only ascending origin tier elites could absorb it. Although he was freakishly talented, he was only a 10 secrets cultivator after all. Under the impact of the ancestral king's essence blood, the physique that he was so proud of was completely vulnerable. His skin split open, revealing bright red flesh. Then pieces of flesh fell off, revealing the eerie white bones underneath. Ah! Ling Han roared in fury. Although his body felt like it was splitting open, he could feel a powerful force growing in his body, rapidly increasing his cultivation level. As if he had gone mad, he grabbed the Rubik's Cube of Origin with his other hand, and extracted the power of regulation from it to increase his martial art tier. You're the one who auctioned the first ancestral king's essence blood, Serene Source suddenly said. No wonder you wanted to exchange for the method to refine the ancestral king's essence blood. Haha, all of this is for me. You're overestimating yourself. A mere 10-leaf cultivator dares to refine the ancestral king's essence blood? I don't even need to make a move, and you'll be crushed by the power of the ancestral king. He stopped. The ancestral king's essence blood on Ling Han's body shone brightly, transforming into sabers, swords, axes, and other weapons. Every weapon was covered with terrifying seals, and he didn't dare to attack at all. Otherwise, he would only kill himself. This was equivalent to an ancestral king showing off his might. So what if he was an emperor star? Before reaching this cultivation level, he didn't have the qualifications to be a match at all. Ling Han grinned. His body was bathed in blood, and his white bones were everywhere. He looked ferocious and frightening, but his fighting spirit soared. He dared to do this because his physique had already advanced to the ascending origin tier. Otherwise, how could he have withstood Serene Source's wild and chaotic attacks? This was why he dared to refine the ancestral king's essence blood. He liked to take risks, but he would definitely be confident or have a backup plan. Power surged into his body like the sea, and Ling Han roared in fury. He felt as if he was about to explode, but he was clearly about to lose all his flesh, and only his skeleton was left. He wanted to give vent to this power. He charged out, clenching his fist and punching out at Serene Source. Serene Source paled in shock. He didn't dare to take this attack head-on, and hurriedly dodged. It wasn't that he was afraid of Ling Han's battle prowess, but rather that Ling Han's entire body was now covered with the blood essence of an ancestral king, and it was all activated. That was so ferocious that it was as if an ancestral king had cast a spell on Ling Han's body. If anyone dared to attack, they would only be smashed into pieces. This person was too despicable. He was clearly seeking death, yet he wanted to drag him down with him. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Don't run if you can. Come fight 300 rounds with your father." These words were transmitted through his divine sense. Serene Source smirked coldly. "If you want to die, I have no interest in accompanying you in your madness." The two of them battled again, but this could only be called a chase. Ling Han was chasing, and Serene Source was dodging. He didn't dare to take them head-on at all. However, Ling Han had mastered the laws of space and time. Serene Source was at a disadvantage if he kept dodging. He would be hit once or twice, and he would be heavily injured. If Serene Source was not at the 11-leaf stage and possessed formidable combat strength, he would have been crushed and killed by Ling Han a long time ago. Although Ling Han was in pain, his cultivation base was skyrocketing. His aura was becoming more and more terrifying. It was as though an ancient fiend god was about to awaken. Serene Source was initially waiting for Ling Han to commit suicide. However, the longer he waited, the more flustered he became. Something's not right. Why hasn't this person been reduced to a bloody pulp? The ancestral king's essence blood was terrifying. If one could not withstand it, one would be crushed to death in no time. However, although Ling Han looked extremely wretched, his aura was rising rapidly. It seemed like he was about to reach the 11-leaf stage. What kind of monster is this guy? Not only did he withstand the ancestral king's essence blood, but he's also breaking through in the midst of battle. Although Serene Source was confident, he would not be so crazy as to do something like this. 8 Lotus had used the ancestral king's essence blood in the middle of a battle. Was this not seeking death? Alas, Ling Han managed to pull through. Quang. At this moment, dark clouds rolled in the sky. Lightning flashed. Serene Source's lips twitched. He was rendered speechless. Ling Han had truly accomplished a miracle that no one else dared to imagine. He was about to reach the 11-leaf stage. Serene Source had never been afraid. However, at this moment his legs were trembling. He felt an indescribable chill. How could there be such a monster? Ling Han laughed. He left Serene Source behind and shot into the skies. He wanted to fight the heavenly tribulation first. Serene Source only hesitated for a moment before he turned around and fled. Chapter 2330. Serene Yuan's first reaction was to run. It was simple. If the current Ling Han was already this terrifying, how terrifying would his strength be after he passed the heavenly tribulation? Hence, if he did not run now, he would be waiting for death. Although it was humiliating, he did not even dare to fight someone of the same cultivation level. Was this how the Emperor Star behaved? However, in the face of reality, Serene Yuan chose to protect himself. He would only die if he tried to be brave. As long as he was alive, there would be hope. Go. His speed was as fast as lightning. Crackle. A bolt of lightning shot down and blocked his path. No, it was not a bolt of lightning. It was a person wrapped in lightning. Ling Han was bathed in lightning. Lightning crackled as his hair fluttered in the wind. He looked like a demonic god. He said calmly, "My good son, where do you want to go?" Serene Yuan scoffed. "Are you trying to stop me? Be careful. The heavenly tribulation is merciless and will kill you." After reaching the 11-leaf stage, he would possess the battle prowess of 9 lotus. This was heaven-defying. Hence, he would be targeted by the heavens and earth. A terrifying lightning tribulation would descend to kill such a heaven-defying villain. Ling Han dared to ignore the heavenly tribulation and attack him? Was he not seeking death? "It won't be easy to take my life," Ling Han said with a smile. "However, you'll die here today." He did not hesitate to expose the secret that he possessed an ancestor's blood essence. Naturally, he would not allow Serene Yuan to live. "You should deal with your own problems first. If you survive the heavenly tribulation, I'll come and finish you off." Serene Yuan retreated hastily, putting aside the fact that Ling Han's battle prowess could increase explosively at any time. Even if Ling Han was weaker than him, he would not dare to attack him. After all, Ling Han was going through the heavenly tribulation. This heavenly tribulation was shocking. Ling Han had already used the indestructible true fluid to repair his body once. However, under the lightning, his body was quickly torn to shreds. All that was left was a set of white bones. Pieces of flesh hung from his body. It was as wretched as one could imagine. It could not be helped. The power of lightning was too violent. Even his physique could not handle it. Meanwhile, various comprehensions rose up in Ling Han's heart. There was still room for improvement in the indestructible heaven scroll. Of course, it was impossible for him to compete with the Heavenly Lord in terms of creativity right now. However, the Heavenly Lord of original birth also had his own limitations. This was because he had never left the celestial domain before. The regulations that he grasped were merely those of the celestial domain. If he were placed in the origin world, the regulations would actually be richer and more complete. Ling Han had fused the laws of 2 worlds together, and also possessed the magic cube of origin. In terms of the height of the laws, the truth was that he was even slightly higher than Empyrean-born Fate. It was just like how Wally's combat power was definitely not comparable to a heavenly venerate's. But when it came to theoretical knowledge, he might be able to instantly defeat any heavenly venerate. Kwang! A bolt of lightning fell, and because Ling Han was deep in thought, he was instantly struck. This bolt of lightning was extremely terrifying. It transformed into a giant fist, and after the fist smashed down, Ling Han had already disappeared. He had been forcefully smashed into the ground. Seeing this, Serene Yuan took the opportunity to turn around and run. This was his only chance of survival, and perhaps even an opportunity to turn defeat into victory. It should not be a problem for Ling Han to pass the heavenly tribulation, but he would definitely be riddled with wounds and heavily injured. Then, he only needed to turn around and attack again, and Ling Han would still die at his hands. Thus, if he wanted to run, he could put aside his face and pride. History had always been written by the victors. As long as he lived and Ling Han died, he would be the final victor. Ling Han would be the stepping stone for him to become even stronger. No one would remember that there had once been such a person. Ling Han charged out from the ground. He opened a furious fist to meet the heavenly tribulation. He faced the heavenly tribulation with an incomparably small body, yet he was able to withstand the might of the heavenly tribulation. "Good son, don't run so fast." He opened the void spirit space and instantly blocked Serene Yuan's path, his eyes cold. Serene Yuan did not answer at all. His figure spun rapidly. His goal was simple, to stall for time. Ling Han chuckled and activated the great cosmos immortal body. Time flowed, and time passed in the blink of an eye. Serene Yuan realized that everything around him had sped up, and at an alarming rate. Fallen leaves fell like falling stars, and ants moved like lightning. It was extremely strange. His heart immediately trembled, and he came to a realization. It was not that everything had sped up, but that he had slowed down. Ling Han had used the time flow deceleration on him. This fellow was too terrifying. He had displayed 3 types of laws: thunder, space, and time. Adding the law of darkness, that was 4. Grasping 4 laws was not shocking. What was shocking was that the laws of time and space could be said to be of the highest level. Even an emperor star like him would find it extremely difficult to comprehend them. He could only rely on immortal medicine. But time attribute immortal medicine was incomparably precious. Who knew how much it would take to cultivate to the level of 8 lotus? Why could only ancestral kings cultivate laws? It was very simple. Only those who had reached the level of ancestral kings could easily collect immortal medicines. Serene Yuan roared angrily. The law of light bloomed on his body, and he pushed it to its strongest state. Boom! His time flow finally returned to normal. Xiao! His figure immediately sped up, distancing himself from Ling Han. Ling Han spread his fingers and pressed down on Serene Yuan again. It transformed into a giant cage that enveloped Serene Yuan. Serene Yuan did not even dare to parry it, much less take it head-on. This was because if he took the initiative to attack Ling Han, it would be equivalent to interfering with the heavenly tribulation. Then, a terrifying lightning bolt would immediately descend and engulf him. In fact, its might even surpass Ling Han's tribulation. There was no helping it. Who asked you to interfere with the heavenly tribulation? He gritted his teeth and unleashed his potential. His figure accelerated to the limit, and he rushed out of the cage before it could descend. This consumed a lot of his energy, but it allowed him to successfully escape. Good son, how long are you going to hide? Ling Han said with a smile. If the people from 100 Battle Academy saw Serene Yuan's current wretched state, who knew what expression they would have? Serene Yuan did not reply. He was determined. Once the heavenly tribulation came to an end, it would be time for him to blow the horn to counterattack. Just like that, one chased and the other fled. Time flew by. A day passed quickly, and the heavenly tribulation was also nearing its end. However, the terror of the heavenly tribulation only increased. The more powerful an existence was, the more it could not be tolerated by heaven and earth, and it would send down lightning punishment to erase it. This was especially so for the last 3 bolts. Each of them had transformed into giant runes, and they carried with them the will of the ages. They were indescribably terrifying. Ling Han endured it, but cracks had appeared all over the bones in his body. It was as if he would fall apart with the slightest gust of wind. Serene Yuan's eyes lit up, and he suddenly charged back from afar. This was the moment. Die! He drew out a divine sword of light. Man and sword as one, he shot towards Ling Han, intending to deal a fatal blow to Ling Han. Pa! Ling Han stretched out his hand and gripped the blade of the sword. The flesh and blood on his body were visibly regenerating at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, he had already returned to his original form, his true original appearance. You're the scum of that ultra-low plane. Serene Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air. Ling Han's name was extremely famous in the foreign land. In one battle, he had killed over 100 ancestral kings and provoked a celestial to act, but he had actually managed to escape. He was now wanted by the entire world. Serene Yuan had never expected that he would actually be standing right in front of him, reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 2332. Ling Han fled into the distance, and the 5 elites directly gave up on pursuing him. This was an impossible mission. What was the use of being reluctant? They couldn't catch up at all, and it would only be a waste of energy. Ling Han roared, his voice like thunder, echoing in this heaven and earth. This time, not only had his cultivation recovered, but his cultivation had also soared to the 11th mystery, and he was almost able to break through to the ascending origin tier. This was naturally great news, and made him very happy. A few days later, he arrived at the nearest city, and indeed contacted Seven Frost, Yu Yuan and the others. They had been waiting in the city for a long time, and would go out to look for him every once in a while. At present, those who hadn't returned were Ling Han's group of 4, and Yu Yuan. With half of their people missing, the group naturally couldn't leave. Moreover, as the days passed, everyone became more and more anxious. When Ling Han and the others returned safely, everyone was overjoyed. As the 4 of them had all cultivated the heaven-deceiving technique, and had not taken the initiative to reveal their cultivation bases, no one had noticed that their cultivation bases had advanced by leaps and bounds. If they had known, they would have probably linked it to the ancestral monarch's blood. Otherwise, how could their cultivation bases have advanced so rapidly in a mere 50 years? Of course, could a bottle of ancestral king's blood allow so many people's cultivation to soar so rapidly? This was naturally not within their considerations. Yu Yuan won't come. Ling Han shook his head. I saw him killed by 5-9 Lotus 3-leaf elites with my own eyes. If I hadn't reacted quickly and dodged in time, I probably wouldn't have returned. What? Seven Frost and the others exclaimed. Who is Yu Yuan? Although he didn't have an ancestral king, or heavenly venerate master or father, because he had the aptitude of the Emperor's star, he had long been taken in as a personal disciple by one of the 18 Lotus ancestral kings, after he advanced to the 9 Lotus. Now that he was suddenly gone, how were they going to explain it when they returned? Who is so audacious as to actually dare to touch the Emperor's star? Seven Frost roared skywards, flapping her wings and stirring up a frightening gale. The Emperor's star was the future of a plane, and could at least reach the height of the 18 Lotus ancestral kings. The death of any one of them would be a huge loss. Those 5 people are most likely the ones who caused the spatial tunnel to collapse. Ling Han stretched out his finger and imprinted the memory images of those 5 people, including a part of the scene where they chased after him. This was something he had prepared beforehand. As expected, it's them. Yuan cut his pincers hatefully. He had gone back once to investigate the situation. Although the town where the teleportation circle was located had been destroyed, there were still some powerful people who had survived and pieced together the scene of that day. It was the 5 people in Ling Han's memory who had caused this catastrophe. Who would have thought that they would be so deranged as to even touch the Emperor's star that represented the future of a plane? Ling Han thought to himself that although the 5 of them had taken the blame for him, they had not been wrongly accused. They had indeed wanted to kill Serene Origin, but they had not succeeded. When we arrive at the 4 Splendor Academy, we must inform the ancestral kings of this matter, and hunt down these 5. Seven Frost's face was filled with killing intent. They actually dared to touch the Imperial Star. This has crossed the bottom line of the ancestral kings. How daring! Yuan was also filled with killing intent. Even Wuxia and the others were furious. It was not because they had a good relationship with Serene Origin, but because Serene Origin had the ancestral king's blood. Since Serene Origin had died at the hands of others, it meant that the ancestral king's blood could not be retrieved. This was the true reason why they were so angry. They had also taken out everything they had. Let's continue on our way, Yuan said after a while. Serene Origin was already dead, so there was no point in dwelling on this matter. They could only blame themselves for being greedy and obtaining a portion of the ancestral king's blood. In addition, those 5 people had been too daring. They had even dared to attack a disciple of the 100 Battle Academy, and even killed an Imperial Star. This had greatly affected the strength of this plane. It had to be known that every Imperial Star had a chance of becoming a Celestial Venerable, but the possibility was pitifully low. They continued on their way, crossing mountains and rivers through the teleportation circle. After 15 years, they finally arrived at the 4 Splendor Academy. There were still over 20 years until the start of the Battle of the 1,000 Academies, but there were already over 700 academies that had arrived. Moreover, new academies would arrive every few days. In this way, everyone would be able to arrive 10 years before the start of the competition. This was indeed a grand event. Dazzling monarchs could be seen everywhere in the 4 Splendor Academy. It was as if monarchs were cabbages that could be seen everywhere. Ling Han was unusually low-key. He and the girls were all concentrating on cultivation. However, even if the Empress and Hunyo had already reached the peak stage of 10 secrets, they still did not dare to use the blood essence of the ancestral king, because they did not have a physique as tough as Ling Han's. They could only carefully take one step at a time, not daring to advance in the slightest. Actually, there was a huge side effect from Ling Han's rapid cultivation increase. He was now continuously consolidating his foundation. Otherwise, if he easily advanced into the ascending origin tier, it would be a small matter if he could not reach the peak stage of martial art in the future. In fact, he might even lose his life. Thus, before he eliminated the side effect of advancing his cultivation too quickly. Ling Han could not possibly attempt to advance into the ascending origin tier. The Four Splendor Academy naturally arranged accommodations for the guests from each academy. Everyone usually did not interact much, and they all held back their energy, waiting to appear in the official competition. And for this kind of martial arts competition, there would definitely be all kinds of gambling fights. Sure enough, a few casinos had set out betting odds for this competition. Some bet on which academy would get first place, which prodigy would ascend to become the king this time, and there were also bets on the top 10 academies and top 10 elites. In short, there were all kinds of betting odds, and the number was astonishing. Seventh Frost went for a while, and brought back the latest betting odds. There were a total of 5, and they came from 5 different casinos. The 100 Battle Academy's betting odds for becoming the champion was 1 to 5, ranking around 70th among all the academies, which was more or less in line with their actual ranking in the last tournament. The casinos would not set betting odds randomly. They definitely researched and analyzed the information of the members of each academy before finally setting out such betting odds. As for the elite ranking, only Yu Yuan had made it in, and the betting odds for becoming the champion was 1 to 11, showing that the casinos did not treat him very well. The academy with the lowest betting odds is still the Eternal Dragon Academy. Everyone's eyes turned to the first line on the table. It was not just one, but all 5 of them. The betting odds for the Eternal Dragon Academy to become the champion was only 10 to 11. In a tournament with thousands of teams participating together, this was practically inconceivable. However, no one felt that this was strange, because there was an extraordinary character in the Eternal Dragon Academy that was destined to suppress the ages, and his betting odds were also the lowest on the elite ranking. His name was Huaijian, and it was said that he was born with a small sword in his arms. As he grew, this sword also grew. His sword techniques were unparalleled, and even a few ancestral kings clicked their tongues in praise, saying that if their cultivation levels were the same, it would be difficult for them to block 10 strikes from Huaijian. If it was only one ancestral king who said this, then it might just be a joke, but there were a few ancestral kings who said this, so it could be seen how freakish Huaijian was. Chapter 2333. In the previous tournament of the 1,000 Academies, Huaijian had been invincible with his sword. Not only had he easily led the Eternal Dragon Academy to the championship, but he had also crushed the other 9 experts without any suspense, ascending to the top of the experts' ranking. His position was so firm that no one could shake it. This time, it was said that Huaijian's cultivation base was at the peak of 8 lotus and 11 leaf. After another battle for the Eternal Dragon Academy, he would break through to 9 lotus, and be taken in as a disciple by a heavenly venerable. Wuxia and the others shook their heads. Without serene source, what would their ranking be? Ling Han was strong, but he was only at the 8 lotus 3 leaf stage. He could only rely on his treasured sword. However, external power was prohibited in the tournament of the 1,000 Academies. Otherwise, if you threw out an ancestral emperor's decree, I would throw one too. Not only could external power not be used, but defensive treasured armor was also prohibited. This was a competition of martial artists' own strength. We should be able to keep our position in the top 100, Seventh Frost said uncertainly. In the entire foreign realm, there were only 100 or so Emperor stars at the 8 lotus rank. Teams with these people could forget about winning. In the previous tournament, most of the teams were at the 5 or 6 leaf stage. Now they were probably at the 10 or 11 leaf stage. Hence, they could only target teams without Emperor stars. With their overall strength, they should be able to win. Let's fight for it, Yuan said. Who asked them to lose Serene Source? With this super expert gone, their team would lose its core competitiveness. However, Ling Han asked, what's the reward for first place in the academy? What about first place on the expert leaderboard? If it were not for the reward, he would not have joined in the fun. Of course, eating chicken wings was also part of the motivation. Seventh Frost looked at him in surprise. Did you not grow ears? Or did you forget to bring your brain with you? You still have the mood to care about the reward for first place? I think it's an ancient war beast. However, he still said it. After all, Ling Han was an emperor star that was even more outstanding than Serene Yuan. The next Thousand Academy battle would definitely be the time for Ling Han to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Perhaps he might even be able to reach the height of Huaijian. This thought only flashed past his mind for a moment before he immediately shook his head. There was no one who could compare to Huaijian. This was the one who had the highest chance of becoming an Emperorian in the foreign realm's last great era. The reward for the Academy's #1 is more of a kind of glory, mainly with points and star stones. There will also be some immortal medicine. Only the #1 in the expert ranking can obtain that beast. Yuan added, "It is said that it is indeed an ancient war beast. It was discovered by an ancestral king in a secret realm, and it has yet to hatch." Qi Shuang had also just heard about it, and couldn't help but be shocked. Legend has it that every ancient beast can become an ancestral king. Furthermore, once it recognizes its master with a drop of blood, it will never betray its master. That's why it's so tempting. Yuan shook his head with a wistful expression. They would never be able to reach the level of an ancestral king in their entire lives. But someone actually had a pet beast at the ancestral king level. Sure enough, there was no harm without comparison. It's said that the ancestral king didn't hatch his own battle beast egg because he received a decree from a certain sky sovereign. His goal was to give Huaijian a great fortune, he said again, his envy becoming even stronger. Huaijian was a person who was blessed by the heavens and earth. He stood above all emperor stars. It was a complete misfortune to be born in the same era as him. Ling Han smiled. Such a powerful battle beast. Then he might as well take one in. It wasn't for anything else, it was just to look cool. Which immortal king or ancestral king would become a servant? None. Those who could enter this realm were already on the same level as the heavens and earth in terms of laws. Which one of them wasn't proud and arrogant? How could they be willing to lower themselves to become a servant? Only the battle beast was different. Before hatching, it would directly recognize its master with a drop of blood. That way, it would never betray its master once it was born. He decided to take it in. Huaijian. Ling Han revealed a burning desire to fight. A super prodigy, who had trampled all emperor stars under his feet. His evolution index should be close to 11, right? He yearned for a battle. Bang! At that moment a huge commotion came from the door. "Where's Serene Yuan? Come out and fight me!" Someone shouted. Everyone exited the main hall and saw a young man standing in the courtyard. He was a demon, and his entire body was so red that it was almost black. He had 2 horns on his head, and he was 3 meters tall. His arms were exposed, and they were covered in runes. He didn't look like a human, but rather a forged weapon. Sun Ping. When this person was mentioned, the pupils of those from 100 Battle Academy shrank, and expressions of fear appeared on their faces. Sun Ping was the proud son of Huaping Academy, and he was also an emperor star. In the previous battle of the 1,000 schools, he had lost to Serene Yuan, causing his team to stop advancing and rank below 100 Battle Academy. He had never been convinced, so before the battle of the 1,000 schools had begun, he had run over first. He couldn't help but want to spar with Serene Yuan. Sun Ping swept his gaze across the crowd, looking at them with disdain. Even the 2 3-leaf 9 lotus cultivators were nothing in his eyes. He snorted and said, "Since when did Serene Yuan become a coward? Don't be impudent." Qi Shuang shouted. Boom! Her voice took form and shot toward Sun Ping Town. Bam! Sun Ping threw a punch, and the sound wave was instantly shattered. He said proudly, "Am I wrong?" 11 leaf. The others exclaimed in shock when they saw this. Although Qi Shuang did not use her full strength in this attack, the attack of a 9 lotus cultivator was not something an 8 lotus cultivator could block. Only an 8 lotus cultivator with 11 leaf cultivation base, who had broken through the barrier of the realm and possessed the strength of a 9 lotus cultivator, would be able to nullify the attack of a 9 lotus cultivator. As expected, the previous emperor stars had all improved by leaps and bounds, reaching the 11-leaf stage. How could an emperor possibly stand a chance against such a powerful opponent? So what if Wuya and Sun Feng cultivated to the 7 or 8 leaf stage? The difference between them was like heaven and earth. Qi Shuang suppressed her anger and said, Serene Yuan is dead. Impossible. Sun Ping's expression changed, and he immediately shouted. Serene Yuan was the target of his vengeance, the enemy he had to surpass. It was also because of this goal that he was able to rise from the 4-leaf stage to the 11-leaf stage in a short 1,000,000 years. However, just as he was about to realize his dream, he was suddenly struck by lightning. Serene Yuan was dead. How could this be? He's dead. Yuan shook his head and told Sun Ping about the 5 bold 9 lotus cultivators who ambushed Serene Yuan. We've reported this matter to the ancestral kings. I believe one of the ancestral kings will make a move to apprehend the culprits and punish them. We'll let the world know that the emperor's stars cannot be touched. Sun Ping was speechless. His expression was one of despair. He had endured humiliation for 1,000,000 years, but in the end, he had punched empty air. He seemed to have lost his direction and motivation to move forward. No one knew when he left, but not long after, the news of Nether Origin's death also spread, making many teams secretly happy. They had one less strong competitor, and correspondingly, 100 War Academy's payout rate kept rising, reaching 117, and their ranking was around the 200s. After all, they still had Wuya and Sun Feng. Hence, it was not too difficult. Chapter 2334. Ling Han now had motivation again. He wanted that battle beast. So he had to first become a top 100 elite to have the right to compete for first place in the elite rankings. The rules of the 1000 Academy battle were as follows. In the first round, all teams would enter a mystery realm, where many beacons were hidden. Everyone could search for beacons inside, or defeat other teams to snatch beacons. The time limit was 1 month, and each team would be ranked according to the total number of beacons they obtained. The top 100 teams would enter the second round and undergo an elimination battle. This time, it would be a competition of pure strength. In addition, among the top 100 teams, the most outstanding would be chosen, 1 from each team. These would be the candidates for the elite rankings, and they would fight 1 by 1 to determine the ranking of strength. Enter the top 100 and fight Na Huaijian. Ling Han didn't have any ambition on whether his team could obtain first place or not. In any case, being first in the academy was more of a kind of glory. But why did he want the glory of the foreign realm? Did he really want to join the foreign realm and serve them? Thus, it was fine as long as he could enter the elite rankings. He spent most of his time in seclusion, sometimes under the reincarnation tree, and sometimes in the time cultivation room. This could stack with his great cosmos immortal body, greatly increasing the effect of acceleration. However, the great cosmos immortal body could only be used for a limited time, unlike the time cultivation room, which could be used indefinitely as long as one had money. Not only him, but the Empress and Hunyeo also cultivated diligently. They naturally had no intention of contributing to the foreign realm, and only wanted to improve themselves. Even Sun Feng and Wuya cultivated diligently. They hoped that they could go further in the 8 Lotus tier. But for Monarch tiers, breaking through to the 9 Lotus tier was easy, but to reach the heights of 9 Lotus tier, 10 Leaf tier, and so on was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, and it was even more impossible to achieve with last-minute training. A dozen or so years passed quietly. All the academies had arrived, and the 1000 Academy battle was about to begin. The news of Serene Origin's death had already spread, causing many people to be furious. They actually dared to touch the Imperial Star. This was practically making an enemy of the entire plane. However, even an ancestral king personally moved out, but couldn't capture those 5 audacious people. It was as if they had already disappeared from this world. This even made a heavenly venerate speak out, and issue a heavenly venerate decree to arrest those 5 people. However, they still couldn't compare to Ling Han. Ling Han was wanted by almost all the Empyreans. If they captured or killed him, the Empyreans could guarantee that he would definitely reach the height of the 18 Lotus Ancestor Kings. Because 100 Battle Academy didn't bring many people, they could only report 9 names to participate in this competition. Fortunately, The Thousand Academy tournament only had a limit on the number of participants. However, it didn't mean that they couldn't participate just because they had less than 10 participants. It was just that this was clearly a disadvantage. Who wouldn't want to use 10 slots? Moreover, being able to represent the Academy in battle was also an honor. Who wouldn't look forward to it? After the registration was over, the contestants for the 999 teams were all confirmed. Apart from Huaijian, there were also Chuan Tian, Qinghua, Wan and Mo and so on. They were all in the top 10 of the previous expert rankings. It was unknown if they would be able to challenge Huaijian's position this time, or if they were aiming for second place. Of course, there were also some newcomers who were rubbing their palms together, such as Ling Han, and a few other prodigies who were preparing to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat under a waterfall. A demon youth was inhaling and exhaling the essence of heaven and earth. With every breath he took, the waterfall swayed, as if there was a giant hand shaking it. Upon closer inspection, this waterfall was not simple. One could see stars in the water. This was called the Star Waterfall, and it indeed contained countless stars. Its downstream was connected to the ancient realm of the outer realm. Every drop of water that flowed out would turn into a star. Because of this, the impact of the Star Waterfall was incomparably terrifying. Even a 9-lotus cultivator would not dare to linger here for too long, fearing that the never-ending waterfall would shatter their protective shields. Then, they would be bombarded by billions of stars and suffer grievous injuries. If anyone saw this youth's actions, they would definitely be so shocked that their scalps would go numb. This was too terrifying. Every breath he took brought about a star waterfall. What kind of terrifying power was this? He suddenly stood up and looked into the sky. The number 1 emperor star in this world is definitely not you, Huaijian. It is me, the ruined star. As he spoke, he flapped his wings. Boom! The star waterfall immediately flowed backwards. In the middle of the ocean, an unbelievably beautiful female angel walked barefooted. In her right hand was a long sword that looked like it was made of glass, which was still dripping with blood. Behind her, there was a huge fish that was as large as a mountain floating on the surface of the water. Even though it was already dead, it still emitted a terrifying aura. It's about time to go back, she muttered. She waved her sword, and the void split open. She actually took a step into the void, as if she was not afraid of the void storm at all. Her last words also floated faintly above the ocean. Huaijian, huh? It is said that he was born from heaven and earth. I want to see if he can be a match for me, moon in the well. In the primitive mountain, a holy beast fell to the ground with a loud bang. Its blood flowed all over the ground, and from its skull, a bloodworm suddenly flew out. It was only 3 inches long, but it immediately released a monstrous ferocious aura, causing the surrounding trees to wither and wither in an instant. 7 breaths of time. The bloodworm spoke in the human language. Compared to the last time, it was 1/10 of a breath's time. It had a proud look on its face. 7 breaths of time had killed a 9-lotus 1-leaf saint beast. Could a second 8-lotus 11-leaf saint beast do it? In the Battle of the Thousand Schools, I, Blood Spear Guild, will personally defeat Huaijian. Early in the morning, Ling Han and the others were woken up. 7 Frost and Abyss were going to give them their final encouragement. This time, Serene Source is not here, so our goal is to stay in the top 200. We will strive to enter the top 100, 7 Frost said loudly. Are you guys confident? Yes. Boundless, Sun Feng, and the others replied loudly. Although Emperor Stars had outstanding battle prowess, one's realm was also important. For example, Ling Han. As long as he didn't use that immortal sword, none of them would be afraid of him. Moreover, although strength was important in the first round, one could not deny that luck played a large part in it. If one was lucky enough, entering the top 100 would not be difficult. Of course, there was no hope in the second round. Without a high-tier Emperor Star to watch over them, they would only be eliminated in 1 round. Abyss gave them a few words of encouragement, and then the group set off for the competition venue. 1,000 teams had gathered, and all of them were peerless geniuses. Basically, all of them were emperors. Only an extremely small number of teams had a single emperor. They simply could not gather 10 emperors, so they could only use emperors. Otherwise, this spot would be a waste. I won't say much about the rules. You are not allowed to kill, and you are not allowed to use any methods other than your own strength. Otherwise, those who deserve to die will pay with their lives, and those who deserve to be disqualified will be disqualified. Don't hope for any luck. An ancestral king arrived. He had 10 lotuses on his forehead, and he emanated a completely different aura. He was high and mighty like heaven and earth. Let's begin. He waved his hand, not bothering to waste words. In the eyes of the ancestral king, these people were really just children. Even if everyone's future achievements surpassed his, who knew how long it would take? Chapter 2336. This time, the foreign territory seemed to welcome an era of 100 flowers blooming. Famous geniuses advanced rapidly and were still powerful, and new people appeared in large numbers. It was a scene of prosperity. 7 Frost and Abyss stared at the stone tablet. Currently, 100 Battle Academy's score was only 722nd. Not to mention advancing into the top 100, it was far from even being in the top 200. They couldn't help but feel strange. With the strength of Ling Han's group, although entering the top 100 required luck, it shouldn't be a problem for them to enter the top 200. Could it be that they were robbed by a strong team? But the number of beacons they received never suddenly dropped, so it couldn't be robbed. Hey you guys, these 4 are really relaxed. Someone suddenly laughed. Because the image displayed on the stone mirror was not fixed, it could capture every corner of the mystery realm, and then display it randomly. Ha ha ha. Instantly there was laughter. 7 Frost and Abyss also went over, almost fainting from anger. In the image Ling Han, who knew, and the other 2 girls were leisurely eating barbecued meat. That alone was fine. But the key was that there were 4 tents behind them. Did they need to set up a tent to eat? Obviously not. Setting up a tent meant staying for a day or night. But with everyone's cultivation, they wouldn't feel tired even if they didn't rest for hundreds of millions of years. How long had it been since they entered the mystery realm? And these 4 actually set up a tent to rest. How could this not be a joke? 7 Frost and Mystery finally understood why their academy's ranking was so low right now. That was because they were 1 person short in the first place, and Ling Han's group of 4 had been so passive. It would be a miracle if they could still make it into the top 200. On one hand, the 2 of them were furious at Ling Han, and the others fooling around. While on the other, they were also blaming Sun Feng and the others for actually not stopping them. They lost face in the 1000 Academy battle. They really wanted to dig a hole and bury themselves. Haha, which academy are they from? Someone asked. Not sure, seems like it's their first time participating. Hee, it's their first time participating, so they don't know the situation. So they treat it as a camping trip? Hey, I think I've seen these people before. I arrived with them, 100 Battle Academy. What 100 Battle Academy? I'm dying of laughter. Could it be that without Serene Source, they don't even have the confidence to fight? What's the point of having such a person? He'll only embarrass us in the 2-realm battlefield. All the experts snorted coldly. They were filled with disdain towards the attitude of Ling Han's group of 4. Not only did they waste their spots, they were also disrespecting the other participants. 7th Frost and Abyss tried their best to lower their heads to avoid the sword-like gazes from piercing holes into them. The ruined star just happened to be here. They are going to meet. Haha, it's time to teach them a lesson. This is not a place for them to take a vacation. Many people suddenly became excited. That terrifying youth was currently approaching the Great Lake, and as soon as he arrived, he would be able to reach the 4 tents set up there. Everyone looked at the stone mirror, somewhat impatient. Inside the mystery realm, Ling Han's group of 4 was initially enjoying their meal when the Empress and Hunyo suddenly paused and stopped what they were doing. Then they simultaneously looked towards the left. They discovered that a youth of the demon race was currently walking in their direction. His speed was not fast, but this youth was extremely terrifying. It was as if he was carrying the stars on his back, and when his foot landed, the heavens and earth shook. Meanwhile, Ling Han and Bewitching Maiden Ro did not react. One had long since discovered it, and did not care at all, while the other had truly not noticed it. Only after a while did she realize that the Empress and Hunyo were still staring at the same spot, and did not continue eating. Did she raise her head in hindsight? Hand over the beacon, and then get lost, the youth said coldly. As he spoke, the wings behind him spread slightly, showing an incredibly arrogant attitude. Ling Han smiled and said, "If you want to eat meat together, there's no harm in sitting down. If you want to fight, wait until we're done eating." The youth was naturally the ruined star. He looked at Ling Han in surprise, revealing an expression of surprise. This person was really quite daring, actually daring to mock him in front of him. He smirked coldly. "You guys are not qualified to sit with me." He strode towards Ling Han's group, a boundless aura spreading out. He was like an unsurpassable demon god. Though Hunyo and the Empress had not advanced to the 11-leaf stage, they were 10-leaf Emperor stars themselves, and naturally could not be suppressed by the aura of an 11-leaf stage. Only bewitching Maiden Ro looked slightly uncomfortable. Her cultivation level was a little lacking after all. Ling Han drew out an empty wine cup, filled it, and tossed it at the ruined star. It was extremely smooth, and not a single drop spilled out. "I said you guys are not qualified." The ruined star humphed, and shot out a punch, intending to shatter this wine cup. But after this punch his expression changed slightly. The wine cup was imbued with the powerful power of regulation, and he actually could not destroy it. However, with this block, the power imbued on the wine cup was also exhausted, and it suddenly stopped in front of him. Then, under the effect of gravity, it fell to the ground. The ruined star's expression changed again. He stretched out a hand, and caught the wine cup. If he had shattered the wine cup with a punch, then there would naturally be nothing to say. But the situation now was not like this. Rather, Ling Han had accurately calculated the power of his punch, and just happened to send it in front of him. If he did not accept it, the wine cup would spill in front of him, and that would be his humiliation. Thus he had to accept the wine cup. However, when Ling Han offered him a toast, he said that he was not qualified, yet his hand still accepted it. This was equivalent to him losing by a small margin. It couldn't be helped. Who asked him to underestimate Ling Han's strength? When this punch was thrown, he was already at a disadvantage. He indeed did not take Ling Han seriously. The power of this punch was not great, but it was enough to make him realize Ling Han's strength. Somewhat interesting. He grinned, revealing his snow-white teeth, looking a little like a savage beast. "I cannot bear to kill such an opponent here. I will wait for you in a one-on-one battle. I hope you won't disappoint me." He laughed loudly, then turned around and left. His fighting spirit was already boiling, but he could not enjoy fighting to his heart's content in this place. There were too many restrictions, thus he endured it. Ling Han smiled faintly, his hands trembling slightly. Of course it was not because of fear, but because of excitement. This opponent made him feel as if he had encountered Ji Wuming, who was astonishingly powerful. Then let's fight again. During the ranking of the experts, the two of them could be said to appreciate each other. However, the people outside could only see the scene, but not the sound. They were all very confused. Why did one of them offer a toast, and the other take it and leave? Could it be that they knew each other? "Count them lucky," the experts outside said unhappily. They did not pay any more attention to Ling Han and his companions, because the scene had already shifted from Ling Han and his companions to another area. In the blink of an eye, 15 days had passed. Almost all the beacons buried in various places had been taken out. Some people took the beacons and hid them, while others began to sweep the area to obtain even more beacons. "It's time to set off," Ling Han said with a smile. Chapter 2337. Ling Han's group of 4 joined in the fight for the beacons. Even though there were only 4 of them, one of them was a Mystery 11, while the other 2 were Mystery 10. Just these 3 people alone could open up a path. What more when they were teaming up? Moreover, Ling Han wasn't an imperial star. Instead, he was a freakish genius whose evolution index was close to 11. The 4 of them swaggered forward, not looking for a place to hide their tracks like the others. It was as if they had carved 4 large words on their faces. Come and snatch me. There were indeed many people who came to snatch them. Soon enough, a team charged out and surrounded them. Yo, why are there only 4? Someone whistled. Did you get separated from the team? Call me Big Brother, and Big Brother will protect you. 3 women and 1 man. This is the rhythm of 1 king and 3 empresses. Someone was even more frivolous. What a heavy taste. 3 angels and 1 demon. A male angel said with jealousy. The empress and the others were as beautiful as fairies, and their temperaments were moving. However, the only man in the team was a demon. This was simply infuriating. Ling Han cracked a smile. I'll give you a choice. Do you want to hand over the beacons and let me fight to my heart's content? Or do you want me to fight to my heart's content, and then hand over the beacons? The 10 people in the team looked at each other, and suddenly burst into laughter. Was it not funny? There were only 4 people, and they wanted to kill their team? We have a third choice, and that is to beat you up. A bug walked out. He had a huge and fat, but that took up half the size of his body. It was bright red and covered in stripes, and there was actually a sense of rhythm to it. Shio, he dashed out. Although he was extraordinarily fat, his movements were agile and fast. With a flash, he arrived in front of Ling Han. He stretched out 2 claws and grabbed at Ling Han. Each of his claws was covered in barbs, and they shone with a cold light. 8 lotus and 6 leaves. This bug was a monarch tier. Ling Han stretched out his hand, and the 2 claws fell into his palm. Then, with a twist, the jade-green blood of the insect shot out violently from the severed limbs. Gee! That insect was startled at first. It had never thought that Ling Han would be so strong, and that it was actually not a match for him. Then, because of the pain, it let out a sharp cry, which turned into a terrifying ripple that spread out in all directions. Pung pung pung, mountain rocks shattered and trees fell. However, he was also a veteran, so he didn't panic because of this. Instead, he raised his buttocks, and Pu. A stream of gray air instantly sprayed out, and it was filled with a foul smell. This was the innate divine skill of his race. Smelly farts contained a strange poison. Creatures of the same cultivation level would feel dizzy just by smelling it. Those with weaker strength would directly turn into pus, and those with stronger strength would also be affected, their battle prowess greatly dropping. Therefore, not only could it be used to save his life, but it could also be used to turn defeat into victory. Ling Han puffed his cheeks and blew. Wuxia, powerful gust of wind surged, like a gale from the 9 heavens. As it howled, all the gray air was swept away, and the clear sky reappeared. The smug smile that had just appeared on the insect's face immediately collapsed. He shuddered, knowing that he had encountered a tough opponent this time. His strength was not just a little bit stronger than his, but a complete and utter suppression. Though killing was prohibited in the first round of competition, no one had said that they couldn't beat their opponents violently. Who would be willing to be beaten up for no reason? Especially since they were basically monarch tiers, and would definitely become ancestral kings in the future. If they left a huge stain on their record, they would definitely be laughed at by others in the future. Run! The other 9 hurriedly broke into a run. In any case, their comrade wouldn't die, and would only suffer some physical pain. Protecting the beacon was their first priority. The Empress, Hunyo, and Bewitching Maiden Row split up to attack. Aside from Bewitching Maiden Row being slightly weaker, the Empress and Hunyo both had 10 secret imperial stars, so how powerful was their battle prowess? As long as the 11 secret imperial stars didn't appear, who could compete with them? Not a single one of the team of 10 actually managed to escape, and were instead surrounded by Ling Han and the others. This was a little ironic. In the beginning, it was these 10 people who had come to flank them, but in the blink of an eye, the positions of the 2 sides had changed. Which path do you guys choose? Ling Han asked smilingly. If you hand over the beacon first, I can beat you more lightly. The 10 people were speechless, but they all took out the beacons on their bodies and tossed them to Ling Han. Ling Han counted. These people's gains were not bad, and there were over 70 beacons. He cracked a smile and said, "Enter the second round." Pung pung pung. The 4 of them moved, and only after teaching these 10 a lesson did they let them leave. Then they began to wander around, looking for the next target to rob, and waiting for others to deliver themselves to their doorstep. Their luck was not bad. Very soon, they encountered another team. This time, they came over from afar without saying another word, taking the initiative and cooperating. "Since you guys are so obedient, we'll only rob half of your beacons," Ling Han said as he chuckled. After all, they had just opened, and the other side had taken the initiative to give them a 50% discount. "You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." The 10 people coldly laughed and immediately attacked. In just 2 minutes, the battle had ended. The 10 people's faces were all bruised and swollen, and they left dejectedly, their hearts filled with regret. They had actually taken the initiative to face these 4 fiends. They had truly been stupid. Fortunately, these 4 people had their principles, and they had only taken half of their beacons, leaving them some hope. However, not long after they had left, they saw a woman appear at the front of the team. She was from the angel race, and she was astonishingly beautiful. Her feet were bare, and her skin was as white as jade. Her black hair fluttered without any wind, making her seem as if she was about to float away with the wind. "She has the demeanor of a celestial maiden," the woman said calmly, but her tone was filled with a domineering aura. The 10 people were all furious. It was fine that they had been robbed by the 4-person team, but now there was actually someone who wanted to rob them alone. Did they think they were easy to bully? "Take her down." The 10 people moved together, wanting to take down this woman. Snatching one more beacon was also good. The woman snorted coldly, and she flicked her 10 fingers. Shio shio shio. Sword chi surged, and the 10 people were all nailed to the ground. The regulations had transformed into swords of light, and they were incomparably terrifying. After robbing them clean, the woman floated away. The 10 people exchanged glances, feeling extremely depressed. They had been lucky after being robbed by Ling Han's group, who had left them half of their beacons. However, they had then encountered a female fiend who had robbed them clean, causing them to return to a destitute, primitive society overnight. This woman is heading in the same direction as the previous 4. "Perhaps they will meet," someone suddenly said. "Hee hee, that will be fun. God bless them, they must meet." Someone even put his palms together and prayed to a heavenly venerable. In the outside world, because of Ling Han's group of 4 successful robberies, 100 War Academy's score began to skyrocket, and its ranking also rose rapidly. In just half a day, it had risen from 700-something to 400-something. This change was too great, and it attracted many people's attention. Cell phone reading is refreshing. Chapter 2338. 100 War College suddenly showed their might. 100 War College suddenly showed their might. Without Serene Source, how can they be so fierce? That's right, there are still 4 people on vacation at the lakeside. There are only 5 of them, but they actually defeated so many teams in half a day. Unbelievable. Many experts cast their gazes over, but the scores and rankings on the stone tablet were updated almost constantly. However, on the other stone, the scene in the secret realm could not be controlled. You could go wherever you wanted, and it was impossible to track a team all the way. 7 Frost and Yuan were looking at each other. Could it be that Sun Feng and the others showed their might? This group of brats could really endure, causing them to worry for more than 10 days in vain. Alright, let's continue to charge and enter the top 200 in one go. The 2 of them were surprised to find that their prayers were actually answered. 100 War Academy's ranking kept rising, from 400-something to 300-something, and then slowly charged towards the top 200. However, the higher the ranking, the greater the difference in the number of beacons. This caused 100 War College's ranking to no longer skyrocket, jumping dozens of places at a time. Instead, it continued to fall from 4 or 5 places to 2 or 3 places, 1 or 2 places. 214, 213, 212. The 2 of them kept counting. They had never discovered that they actually had this kind of hobby. When 100 War Academy's ranking jumped into the top 200, they even excitedly hugged each other, but immediately separated again. Damn, the insect race and the sacred beast actually hugged each other. It was simply a huge joke. It was like a pair of demons and angels. They would be laughed at by the majority of people. However, this was not the final ranking. 100 War College's position was still moving forward. 190, 180, 170. Although the speed was not very fast, there was still a lot of time left. Based on this trend, entering the top 100 was almost guaranteed. This made Seven Frost and Yuan very happy. However, they soon realized that their college's score had not moved for a long time, and it even dropped a few points. Although it was not much, it caused the ranking to drop one place. What was going on? Within the secret realm, the path of Ling Han's group of 4 was blocked by a graceful lady from the angel race. She was extremely beautiful, and her appearance was breathtaking. Her 2 snow-white wings were filled with holiness and holiness, but what moved Ling Han's group of 4 was the aura she emitted. It was like a vast ocean, vast and majestic. Hand over the beacon. Moon in the Well said faintly. There was only one person who could be regarded as an opponent by her, and that was Huai Jian, who sat high above the altar. The others did not even have the qualifications to be looked at by her. Blazing fighting spirit began to rise in Ling Han's eyes. The foreign realm was truly full of prodigies. At first he had thought that only Huai Jian was worth fighting, but first there was the ruined star, and now there was this woman from the angel tribe. Both of them could cause his fighting spirit to boil, so they could definitely be regarded as formidable opponents. It was no wonder that the immortal region could only passively take a beating. The environment was different, and the quality of the geniuses nurtured was also astonishing. He took a step forward. His aura also rose endlessly. Moon and Well was stunned. Her opponent's aura was actually able to contend against her, and not be at a disadvantage at all. There was actually such a person in this world. Huai Jian, she said solemnly, but she immediately shook her head. Although Huai Jian was also a man, he was from the angel clan, while the man in front of her was a genuine demon clan. The difference was too great. Who are you? She asked again. Tyrant, Ling Han said faintly. 100 Battle Academy. Moon in the Well looked surprised. She had indeed heard of such an academy in 100 Battle Academy, but she did not remember there being any elites in this academy. That's right, there seemed to be an emperor star called you something, but it was definitely not called Tyrant. Moon in the Well, Ziyang Academy. She also introduced herself. She did not dare to underestimate Ling Han in the slightest. He was already an opponent, or else she would not have revealed her own identity. Weaklings did not deserve to know who she was. I would like to learn from you, she said again. Ling Han clenched his fists. Sure. Xiao Moon in the Well's figure pounced, like a beautiful and graceful immortal crane. But as her arms shook, hundreds of sword chi instantly shot out, covering the sky and earth as they shot towards Ling Han. Ling Han was naturally unafraid. He launched a furious punch, his movements bold and extremely profound. The 2 great prodigies exchanged blows, each move clashing head-on. In the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged over 100 moves. Hunyao and the Empress were both burning with fighting spirit. They were not people who were willing to watch from the sidelines, but there seemed to be a chasm between secrets 10 and 11. This step was extremely shocking, and if they did not cross it, they would not be able to participate in the final contest of the 1000 Academy tournament. No, they had to advance to the 11th secret as soon as possible. Otherwise, if they encountered opponents like Moon in the Well and the Ruined Star, they would not be qualified to participate at all. Xiao, Moon in the Well and Ling Han separated, and neither of them attacked again. There are too many restrictions to battle here, Moon in the Well said. You have a place on the elite ranking. Let's fight another day. Ling Han nodded. This woman was indeed very powerful, but he didn't think that he couldn't defeat her. This was because his physique was incredibly powerful, and also because he had fused the regulations of the 2 realms. This was something that no imperial star of the foreign realm could do. We'll fight then. Moon in the Well floated away, and Hunyao and the Empress had no interest in continuing to battle. They both entered the Black Tower, wanting to break through as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Ling Han continued to sweep with bewitching maiden row. Although their numbers had decreased, their battle prowess was almost not weakened. because Ling Han was still here. An 11-leaf cultivator was equivalent to 10 or even 20 10-leaf cultivators. As long as he did not encounter an 11-leaf cultivator, Ling Han could easily sweep through them. It could even be said that as long as it was not a super freak like the ruined star or moon in the well, other 11-leaf emperor stars like the serene source could not withstand more than 100 moves from him. Time passed day by day, and when it came to the 25th day, the 100 Battle Academies ranking finally entered the top 100. This made Seven Frost and Deep overjoyed, although they would definitely show their true colors once they fought in the ranking battles. And in the end, they might only be ranked 99th or 100th, but compared to the last tournament, they did not fall too much. And in the next tournament, Ling Han, the Empress, and the others would definitely have matured, and the heaven-defying freak Huai Jian would no longer exist. At that time, it would be the 100 Battle Academies' turn to dominate. In the Mystery Realm, Ling Han did not know what his team's ranking was. Because he had to enter the top 100, he did not stop plundering. Even several teams that had 11 secret Emperor stars were plundered by him, returning to primitive society overnight. If these teams did not plunder enough beacons, it was very possible that they would be eliminated. Would those with 11 secret Emperor stars be eliminated? It could not be helped. Who asked them to be so unlucky? Outside, the elites of the academies that corresponded to the teams had ugly expressions. They were about to end, but suddenly suffered such a blow, instantly falling into hell. Seven Frost and Deep were grinning so widely that their mouths were almost crooked. They thought that when Sun Feng and the others came out, they would definitely praise them. Chapter 2340. Ling Han sent these Emperor stars away, and then looked at Sun Feng and the others with a smile, not saying anything. There was nothing to say. The appearance of these Emperor stars was already a slap to the face. The faces of Sun Feng and the others were as red as a monkey's butt. The two demons were fine. Their faces were red in the first place, but now they didn't show much, just a little black. I'll go back. Seven Frost and Yuan naturally came out and immediately shouted. They couldn't make a scene now, or they would lose face for 100 Battle Academy. They couldn't wash their dirty linen in public, so they'd fight after closing the door. They all went back. The teams that made it into the second round would naturally receive notice of when and where the second round of competition would begin. Returning to their residence, Sun Feng and the others were naturally scolded, and Ling Han and the others were also criticized. The reason was that they didn't have team spirit, and once they entered the Mystery Realm, they left the team and acted on their own. Ling Han didn't refute, but he already had a plan in mind. In the second round, he would fight passively and strive to make 100 Battle Academy fall last. After this battle, he didn't plan to return to the academy. First, there was nothing that interested him in 100 Battle Academy. Second, he was about to advance into the Ascending Origin tier, which surpassed the upper limit of the academy's tier. Even if he wanted to stay inside, he'd be chased out. Third, he was a person who couldn't stay idle and wanted to go elsewhere. For example, go to other planes. The more planes he went to, the more regulations he could fuse, and the stronger his battle prowess would be among those of the same tier. In a high-level plane, there was actually a monster with an evolution index of 12, and their battle prowess would definitely be above his. Ling Han also had a personality that refused to admit defeat. He wanted to travel to various planes and polish his battle prowess to the strongest level. After a few days of rest, the second round of competition began. 100 teams were divided into 25 groups. With 4 teams in a group, and double elimination would be carried out. The top 2 could enter the winner's battle and compete for a ranking within the top 50. The bottom 2 would fall into the loser's battle and fight for a ranking between 50 and 100. The results of the first round were still somewhat useful. 100 War Academy was placed in the second tier, and in the same group, there was a tier 1, 2, 3, 4. In theory, 100 War Academy's second tier was already considered very strong, but of the other 3 teams, one was first tier, so they naturally had more confidence. The other 2 teams had never seen Ling Han's power, So they only thought that they were lucky enough to obtain so many beacons and break into the second tier. The battles of the 25 groups began at the same time. First, the first group would fight against the fourth group. Then the second group would fight against the third group. The winners of both groups would fight, and the winners would directly advance to the next round, while the winners of the losers match would fight against the losers match to determine the second team to advance. Ling Han's team of 9 went down the stage. Their opponent was the 3rd Tier 9 Lights Academy. The rules of the battle were that one could not use any means other than one's own strength. One-on-one duels and group fights were not restricted. As long as a team was completely exhausted or surrendered, the battle would be over. "If you don't want to suffer, hurry up and surrender," one of them said. "It just so happens that we can save some energy. You guys have already completed your mission by entering the top 100. Without Serene Source, you guys would not even be able to withstand a single blow. It's better for you to quickly recognize the reality." Sun Feng and the other 4 responded passively. They had been ruthlessly reprimanded, so naturally, they were filled with anger towards Ling Han's group of 4. They had made up their minds to not put in any effort. Ling Han chuckled. With a stretch of his hand, he grabbed Sun Feng and the others and smashed them towards the opposite side. Xiao xiao xiao. How powerful was his strength! Sun Feng and the others were infused with the power of the rule by him, and they were like cannonballs, using oneself as a weapon to smash others. The spectators were all speechless. They had never seen such a routine before. However, it was undeniable that Ling Han was truly powerful. After Sun Feng and the others were infused with the power of the rule, the 10 opponents did not dare to face them head-on. They could only dodge and hide. Then, they would launch 2 attacks through the air to show that they had done their best. Xiao xiao xiao. Figures fluttered about, and Sun Feng and the others emitted furious roars of humiliation. Yet they were unable to change their situation in the slightest. Moreover, their opponents weren't much better off. They were like ducks that were being driven away, scurrying all over the place, causing a perfectly fine competition to become a farce. "Don't be arrogant." The opponent's Emperor Star charged over. This was an 11-leaf elite. As he swept past, he left ripples in the air. He threw out a punch domineeringly. Ling Han met the attack with a furious fist and instantly gained the upper hand. In just 100 moves, the Emperor Star had no choice but to submit. This scene left the spectators speechless. An Emperor Star who had reached the highest realm of the 8 Lotus Realm was defeated by Ling Han in just 100 moves. What kind of overwhelming might was this? This person's strength must be on par with Chuan Tian, Qing Hua, Mo, and the others. No, you're underestimating Chuan Tian and the others too much. Someone immediately shook his head. Chuan Tian and the others are ranked in the top 10 of the elite ranking. However, most of the previous Emperor Stars were not at the 11-leaf stage. There's a difference in their cultivation basis. That's why it's so one-sided. That's right. Someone nodded in agreement. Now that everyone's cultivation bases are at the 11-leaf stage, this is a fair fight. To be able to defeat the other Emperor Stars so cleanly, this person's strength must be at Huai Jian's level. When the words Huai Jian rang in the air, everyone fell silent. Huai Jian was a legendary figure. He was destined to stand at the top. No one could stand shoulder to shoulder with him, let alone surpass him. How could Ling Han compare to Huai Jian? Most people shook their heads in disbelief. Huai Jian had already surpassed the level of the Emperor Star. He was far ahead of everyone else, and no one could hope to catch up to him. Regardless of what the others thought, the 9 Light Academy quickly admitted defeat and ended the one-sided fight. Naturally, Ling Han was reprimanded by 7 Frost in Yuan. He could have won with a glorious victory. Why did he have to resort to such a tactic? Naturally, they did not dare to criticize him too harshly. First, they still had to rely on Ling Han's prowess. Second, Ling Han was equivalent to 9 Lotus. They were on the same level. However, in the next round, Ling Han did not fight at all. Instead, he chose to surrender and ended the victor's fight. This infuriated 7 Frost and Yuan to death, but they still had to coax Ling Han so that he could rise up in the final battle. That was because as long as they could win one more match, then no matter how bad the 100 Battle Academy was, they would still be able to get into the top 50. However, Ling Han did not even bother to fight. He simply said that he had internal injuries and wanted to rest and recuperate. Naturally, Seven Frost and Yuan knew that Ling Han said that on purpose. This fellow was full of vigor and did not look injured at all. It was clear he did not want to contribute to the academy. He was only aiming for the rewards on the elite leaderboard. After Ling Han left the arena, Seven Frost and Yuan walked up to him with darkened expressions. They reprimanded him angrily. Ling Han shrugged and said, "Didn't the two of you say you'll fight for 100 and keep 200? Now that you've accomplished your mission, why aren't you satisfied?" Chapter 2341. Seventh Frost and Abyss were both furious. They had set the goal of protecting 200 and fighting for 100, because they had no choice but to do so after Serene Origin's unexpected death. Otherwise, if they had a choice, why wouldn't they want their team to fight into the top 50, or even higher? Now Ling Han had appeared out of nowhere. He could have brought 100 Battle Academy into the top 10, but he had withered after just one battle. How could they not be angry? If you can't do it, then you can't do it all the time. But after giving them endless hope, a hammer smashed down on them, making them dizzy. The two of them kept talking, but Ling Han went straight into his room. He couldn't be bothered with them. The battle of the 1,000 academies continued. Every day, there would be new academies that were eliminated, and there would be academies that advanced triumphantly, aiming for a higher ranking. And in this process, a few geniuses also stood out. Ruin Star, Moon in the Well Shuege. No one would have thought that the one who could challenge Huaijian's position as the Overlord was not one of the top 10 in the previous expert ranking, but a newcomer who had suddenly appeared this time. In the end, the teams led by Huaijian, Ruin Star, Moon in the Well, and Shuege successfully made it into the top 4. If there are no surprises, the Eternal Dragon Academy should win, everyone guessed. The first battle was Eternal Dragon Academy against Three Visions Academy. Ling Han even deliberately went there. Up until now, he had not seen Huaijian's true appearance. He had only heard others talk about how handsome and elegant this person was, how he was extraordinarily talented, and how he was favored by the heavens. In short, this was a man shrouded in countless halos. The competition began, and the members of both sides entered. Immediately, everyone's eyes were fixed on the two people. The rest were mediocre, and there was not a single bit of glory to be shared. Huaijian, Ruin Star. Ling Han had already seen Ruin Star, so his eyes were on Huaijian. This was a member of the angel race. He was tall and slender, and just like every other member of the angel race, he was incomparably handsome, but even more so, he had an astonishing heroic spirit. He stood there as if he was the center of the world, and everyone could only look up to him. Wanting to surpass him was absolutely a fantasy. His expression was clearly very humble, and he even had an amiable smile on his face. However, he gave off the feeling of being high and mighty, like the sun in the sky. Everyone else was a foil to him, and they were overshadowed by his brilliance. However, the Ruined Star was truly extraordinary. He stood with his sword in his arms, exuding a wild aura. He was like a bloodthirsty beast that could not be subdued by anyone. The Ruined Star is so strong. Not bad. To be able to fight against Huaijian in terms of aura, it's almost impossible to find a second person like him. Even if it's not as good, the difference won't be too big. Everyone sighed with emotion, but they were also overjoyed. The stronger the younger generation was, the more prosperous their future would be. The two groups had already begun an intense battle. Soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals. No one came to interfere with Huaijian and the Ruined Star, as they did not have the qualifications to do so. The Ruined Star and Huaijian faced off. Neither of them attacked, but their gazes clashed like blades, and the terrifying aura rippled out. No one could approach them at all, as they would be directly turned into mincemeat. Xiao, the Ruined Star, made the first move. His figure shot out, and he directly punched out. He was truly ridiculously powerful. When he punched out, he turned into 9 black holes that could devour everything. Jian's hands moved, forming a ring that formed a cycle of life and death. 6 paths of reincarnation, he said softly. The ring continuously expanded, and the entire world seemed to be under the control of this ring. Jian stood at the center of the ring, proudly standing like an overlord of the heavens, ruling over all living beings. Boom! The 9 black holes collided with the 6 paths of reincarnation, causing the void to continuously explode. Terrifying chaotic flows of energy surged, and talismans formed an ocean. After this exchange, everyone was dumbfounded because the ruined star was not at a disadvantage at all in this exchange of blows with Jian. This was too shocking. The ruined star actually had the qualifications to fight against Jian. For you to be called the number 1 Emperor Star, you are indeed extraordinary. The ruined star's eyes shone. However, all of your glory will be gone in the blink of an eye. I, the ruined star, am the strongest Emperor Star, the only one. Jian only smiled faintly. It was as if in his eyes, the ruined star was just an inexperienced brat who was not worth his time. Get down from the altar. The ruined star once again attacked, moving as fast as lightning and astonishingly fast. Jian faced it calmly, and his hands moved, one yin and one yang, displaying life and death. This was something that could only be done when one's understanding of the laws of Tao had reached an extremely high level. The laws could also be created and destroyed, so the laws were not the strongest power in the world. They were just a manifestation of the might of heaven and earth. Boom! 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 The 2 strongest Emperor Stars clashed, and every exchange left everyone speechless. Even the 8 Lotus 11-leaf Emperor Stars were dazzled. Everyone was clearly at the same level, and they were also high and mighty Emperor Stars. So why was the difference in strength so great? Ling Han was also watching with great interest. This was indeed the strongest level of Emperor Star battle, and it had given him a great deal of inspiration. In fact, he even had an urge to join the battle, and battle until the heavens and earth were in chaos and ghosts wept and gods howled. Who would win? Everyone was incredibly curious. Originally, there was no suspense. Jian was the overlord of the Emperor Star, and his position was so stable that no one could shake it. It was wishful thinking for other geniuses to even think about approaching his height, let alone surpassing him. However, seeing how fierce the ruined star was, everyone's thoughts began to waver. Perhaps the ruined star could really create a new era, an era of invincibility that belonged to him. However, this battle was forcefully stopped. Apart from the ruined star, everyone else from the 3 Manifestations Academy had been defeated and could no longer fight. The battle had also lasted for a day and a night. According to the rules, if the battle lasted for more than a day, the team with more survivors would be declared the winner. There was no doubt that the Eternal Dragon Academy had won. Everyone sympathized with the 3 Manifestations Academy, but they felt that it was a great pity for the ruined star. The ruined star was not to blame for the loss of this battle, but for the incompetence of his own teammates. However, the Academy's ranking was the Academy's glory, and the number 1 on the experts' ranking was the highest honor for an individual. The ruined star still had a chance. Next was the Ziyang Academy against the East Gradual Academy, which was also the battle between Moon in the Well and Shuege. The result was the same as the previous battle. After a day and a night, Moon in the Well and Shuege were evenly matched. However, because the Ziyang Academy's overall strength was superior, they won by relying on the rules and advanced to the final battle. 3 days later, the final battle began. Jian and Moon in the Well fought fiercely. Both geniuses from the Angel clan shone brightly, and neither was weaker than the other. Many experts sighed with emotion. They had ushered in an astonishing golden age of martial art. The 2 of them were evenly matched, but the others were. After a day and a night, the Eternal Dragon Academy won again by relying on the rules, and won the championship again. Next was the ranking battle of the experts' ranking. The Ruined Star, Moon in the Well, and Shuege had already distinguished themselves. Their reputations were not inferior to Jian's, and they were the strong-seated contestants who ranked first in the experts' ranking. In the end, who would obtain first place? Chapter 2342. The competition for the expert ranking began. First, the strongest member from each of the top 100 teams would be chosen as the representative. Schools like Eternal Dragon Academy and Three Visions Academy would definitely be represented by Huaijian and Ruin Star. However, it was hard to say for other academies because they did not have an Emperor Star, and the strength of the others was similar. They needed to discuss internally before choosing a representative. Based on Seven Frost in Yuan's temperament, they did not want Ling Han to be the representative of 100 Battle Academy. It was his fault for not putting in any effort before. However, when they thought about it again, they still had to count on Ling Han in the next 1000 Academy tournament. They could only submit him with a sour expression. After these 100 people were decided, the next step was to divide them into groups. The Four Brilliance Academy's Ancestral King personally decided on 16 seeded participants. These 16 people could not meet before the quarterfinals. This was to prevent experts who were too strong from meeting each other early. Then, it was a double elimination to give everyone more chances and keep as many strong people as possible. Because there were only 100 people, there were inevitably 28 groups that were luckier. There were only 3 people, and only one person needed to be eliminated to pass. Ling Han was also listed as a seeded participant because of his stunning attack. However, he was mocked by many people. A person who did not even care about the Academy's glory was bound to have limited achievements. The gambling house gave out the odds as usual. Huaijian's odds actually increased, and it was not by a little bit. It reached a high of 1-2. Naturally, this was because of the rise of Moon and Well, Bloodspear, and other Super Emperor stars. The gambling house thought that they were a threat to Huaijian's position as the overlord. Moon and Well and Bloodspear's odds were as low as 1, 2, 1 and 2, 2, 2. They were definitely the best candidates. In comparison, Ling Han's odds were much higher, reaching 1-4. Ling Han decisively bet on himself. He had an invincible heart. So what if he had opponents like Huaijian and Moon and Well? He firmly believed that he would win. Another 7 days later, the first stage of the expert ranking began. Ling Han's luck was not good. He was not assigned to a group of 3. The first match was against an 11-leaf Emperor Star. This was a member of the insect race. It had a blood-red body and was shaped like a ladybug. Its wings were spread open, and there were blood-colored patterns all over its body. A single glance at it would cause one to be sucked in and lose control of their thoughts. You admitted defeat in the team battle. Why don't you do the same now? The insect said in a bewitching voice. It guaranteed that even emperors would follow its orders. His clan was best at bewitching people. Ling Han smiled. Because I want to beat you up. He dashed out and punched out angrily. The bug race was shocked. Not only was Ling Han not bewitched by him, he was not affected at all. This was too exaggerated. He hastily rejoined the fight. However, at the same rank, the difference in evolution index between a rank 11 and rank 10 was too great. It was like an emperor crushing a monarch. Ling Han had the upper hand as soon as the fight began. In just over 80 moves, he destroyed one of the bug race's legs and one of its wings. This was because the bug race member relied too much on the power of bewitchment. Naturally, his combat strength was inferior to the other Emperor stars. In the end, as long as Ling Han was not affected by his bewitchment, he could not even last 100 moves. Ling Han entered the winner's bracket without a hitch. The battle on the other side of the bracket came to an end as well. The winner was a Devil Tribe member. They did not rest, and immediately began the competition in the winner's bracket. In the end, Ling Han easily won this round, and was the first to enter the top 64. The remaining 3 members of the group were not hopeless. They could still fight for the last spot. The remaining 2 would have to fight for the top 65 to 100th place. According to the rules, Ling Han had 5 days to rest before he had to fight for the top 32. Ling Han did not waste any time. He woke up the sleeping Wall and discussed with him. Normally, Wall would be in a state called hibernation mode. According to him, this would consume less energy and only maintain his information processing function. Ling Han did not understand. Anyway, this guy was no different from a block of wood. Everything was the same. He was very interested in the knowledge of higher planes. Knowledge was wealth and power. He did not mind mastering more. Moreover, he also knew that if he wanted to become the strongest, he would have to master the formulas and models that Wall had mentioned. This involved the essence of heaven and earth. The rules were only the embodiment of the power of heaven and earth. They could be completely broken and surpassed. Therefore, focusing on the rules and diligently pursuing them was actually going in the wrong direction. Of course, without reaching the highest realm, one did not have the qualifications to touch the power of heaven and earth. It was impossible to find the right direction. But Ling Han was different. He had the magic cube of origin, and was once the ruler of heaven and earth. He could defy the heavens and touch the power of heaven and earth in advance. Most importantly, he was lucky to meet Wall, the crystallization of countless eras of wisdom and material resources in the Xian'an plane. He also went to a higher plane to learn all the knowledge. Otherwise, he could only fumble around in the dark. Even if his intelligence was 100 times higher, and his talent was 10,000 times stronger, it would still be useless. Wall was extremely generous in this aspect. If he wanted to hide it, he would not have told these things to Ling Han in the past. Under the reincarnation tree, Ling Han's mind was filled with the formulas and models that Wall had mentioned. He felt a little dizzy. He was confident that he was not an idiot. However, when it came to these formulas, he seemed to have become an idiot. He could not understand them at all. He first used thousands of years to master the formulas. Then, he combined these formulas to deduce and prove the model. This made the model come alive, and not just exist on paper. Finally, he combined it with the magic cube of origin to drive the model to operate. Currently, Wall only gave him a model. If he could successfully drive it to operate, then he could extract the virtual energy. This was one of the most fundamental powers of the origin world. Even if he could only extract a trace of it, it would be extremely powerful. However, Ling Han's realm was too low. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for him to extract the virtual energy. He had to go to the core of the foreign plane or mine ores that contain the virtual energy. Only then would he be able to extract the virtual energy. Theoretically speaking, the core of the plane is always in a state of eruption, so there must be such ores that can be found. However, other than creatures with a life index of more than 15,000 points, no one else can sense them. Naturally, they are like stubborn rocks, Wall said calmly. His emotions did not fluctuate at all, except when he talked about the scroll that could not be opened. Ling Han thought for a while and said, "Can I absorb the virtual energy in that scroll?" Theoretically, yes. Wall nodded. However, he immediately shook his head. "But this is mine now. I won't let you use it. It will hurt my interests," he said seriously. Ling Han could not help but laugh out loud. Wall was really a straightforward person. Of course, he did not have any ideas about Wall. This was because he still had a scroll that could not be opened. After finding an excuse, Ling Han went into seclusion again. He took out another scroll that could not be opened and tried to extract the power from it. Chapter 2344. This scene caused everyone's scalp to go numb. Isn't that amazing? You can fight an 11-leaf Emperor star without using the rules? Are you kidding me? Rules were the foundation of one's battle prowess. Even an 18 Lotus Ancestor king would only have about the same battle prowess as a 6 Lotus Ancestor if he didn't use his rules. This was also one of the reasons why the foreign realms couldn't conquer the immortal region. Every expert had to face the problem of exhausting the power of laws in their bodies. As long as they couldn't end the battle quickly, they could only retreat. Otherwise, they would lose their lives. However, Ling Han was able to defeat Sun Ping with just the power of his physical body. If this could be popularized, then the other side would have nothing to worry about. Not only would they be able to invade the celestial realm, but they would also be able to take the initiative when invading other realms after the celestial realm was merged with them. All of a sudden, everyone forgot about Ling Han's past arrogance and rebelliousness. This was a priceless treasure. Only the ancestral king shook his head. He completely understood. Ling Han should be the person who had triggered the heavenly tribulation. The reason for this was that he had somehow grasped a trace of the world's power, which was why he had been targeted by the world. Clearly, he had not succeeded, and it was impossible for him to succeed. A mere 8-lotus cultivator was not qualified to control the power of heaven and earth. In this ancestral king's opinion, Ling Han must have consumed some kind of rare treasure and accidentally activated the power of heaven and earth, thus provoking the heavenly tribulation. His body was tempered by the power of heaven and earth, thus possessing a trace of the power of heaven and earth. The power of the heavens and the earth was the essence of everything. Naturally, it was above the rules, so it wasn't strange for it to be able to rival the rules. Of course, if it were not for the fact that Ling Han's physical strength had long since advanced into the ascending origin tier, it would not have been so miraculous if he had merely been tempered by the void energy. This was a miracle that could not be replicated. The more Sun Ping fought, the more panicked he became. His opponent clearly hadn't used the laws, but he was still able to fight against him without falling into a disadvantageous position. If he was serious, how terrifying would he be? He wasn't the only one who thought this way. Everyone else was thinking the same thing. For example, Huai Jian, Ruined Star, Moon in the Well, and Blood Spear all looked at Ling Han cautiously. This was especially true for Moon in the Well. She had fought Ling Han before. Although she hadn't used any powerful moves, both of them had realized how strong the other was. That was why they were looking forward to the battle on the experts' ranking list. But now, she realized that Ling Han's strength was only the tip of the iceberg. What is the limit of this evil demon clan? After exchanging another 100 moves, Ling Han shook his head and came to his senses. He really couldn't remember how he had done it. It was better to teach those formulas and models to Hun Yo and the others later, and gather everyone's power to think of it together. If they succeeded, their combat strength would increase by leaps and bounds. He could even open up a different and powerful path, avoiding the rules themselves and directly using the power of the heavens and the earth to improve himself. Thinking of this, he punched out. Pong! It hit Sun Ping right in the face. Sun Ping couldn't help but stagger, and after barely walking 2 steps, he sat on the ground. It was as if his spirit had been beaten out of his body, and he was completely unable to command his own body. The referee outside the dominating victory loudly announced the result. Sun Ping was dazed. In the last tournament, he lost to Serene Yuan, and in this tournament, he lost to Ling Han again. Could it be that 100 Battle Academy was his nemesis? Moreover, Serene Yuan was only slightly stronger than him, and if he worked hard, he could still surpass him. However, Ling Han's strength made it impossible for him to have any extravagant thoughts. Just like Huai Jian, high and mighty, and could only be worshipped. Ling Han fought another battle, and naturally entered the top 32, with the result of 2 complete victories. He had another 5 days to rest. After returning, he immediately gathered all the girls, and told them about his previous experience. This made all the girls very happy. For example, Lu Yutong, Li Xichan, and the others were limited by their talent, and their cultivation speed was extremely slow. Even if they used the ancestral king's blood, they were only slightly faster than ordinary emperor tiers. However, if there was another way to improve, and the end of it was even heavenly venerable tier, then that would naturally be great news. Of course, there was only one mysterious scroll left, and how long it could be used was also a problem. Everyone comprehended it day and night, but those formulas of Wally's were bitter and difficult to understand. Even emperor stars like the Empress and Hunyo improved slowly, and probably wouldn't be able to make any progress in a short period of time. The Empress and Hunyo both had a clear goal. They would first attempt to break through to the 11th secret, and then study the matter of virtual energy. Meanwhile, Bewitching Maiden Ro also set her sights on the ascending origin tier, determined to become the first among them to reach the ascending origin tier. Similarly, she wasn't bewitched by virtual energy. Ling Han expressed his admiration for the determination of these 3 girls. Cultivators had to have their own determination, and only then could they climb to the peak. In the following 5 days, Ling Han still didn't make any progress, and the elite ranking had already entered the top 16, and it was still a double defeat elimination. With Ling Han's strength, he naturally entered the top 16 without any surprises or mishaps. And in the top 16, only one seed was not retained. This was also because he encountered a strong opponent in the top 32, and both sides were wounded. 5 days wasn't enough to recover at all, and in the battle of the top 16, he was defeated by a strong opponent. Starting from the top 16, it was single defeat elimination, and each person only had one chance. Ling Han's first opponent was the second in the last elite ranking MO. This was a saint beast, a wolf. Its whole body was covered in long silver fur, and one of its tails was in the shape of a dragon, strong and powerful. As it lashed out, even space could be forcibly shattered, forming a stretch of nothingness behind it. He was an elite that had long since become famous. Long before Huaijian appeared, he had already obtained the first place in the elite ranking, and he clearly had no intention of breaking through to the ascending origin tier, as if he planned to stay on this cultivation level and become the person who had ascended to the top the most times in the history of the elite ranking. Of course, this was just someone else's wild guess. He didn't break through because he felt that his foundation wasn't solid enough, and there was still room for further improvement. He stood in front of Ling Han, his figure ramrod straight, like an angry arrow. "Tyrant, I finally have a chance to spar with you," he said, his voice booming like a clap of thunder. Yet Ling Han felt a bit of pity. This kind of saint beast's meat would definitely be delicious and incredibly nourishing. But now that so many people were watching, how could he kill it and store it into the Black Tower? "Niu wants to eat meat," Niu shouted from outside, reminding Ling Han. Ling Han sighed and stared at one of Mo's thighs, saying, "Let's make a deal. How about selling this thigh to me? I promise I won't eat it, and will only do research." Mo instantly flew into a rage. "You still say you won't eat it? You fuck you's eyes are almost shining as you stare at me, and your saliva is also almost dripping out of your mouth. Who are you trying to fool? You dare to underestimate me, you've gone too far." He attacked in anger, and an ancient symbol appeared on his wolf head, exuding an astonishing aura that was incredibly terrifying. It said that Mo has received guidance from a heavenly venerable. That's right. The symbol on his forehead came from that heavenly venerable. Tisk tsk, he's received guidance from a heavenly venerable. No wonder he can rank second on the elite ranking. It's still uncertain who will win this battle, the spectators discussed spiritedly. Chapter 2345. Ling Han was indifferent. In a battle at the same cultivation level, Emperor Stars could no longer arouse his interest. His level had already surpassed Emperor Stars, and he had reached a higher level. The Outlander realm did not have a name for this level, but there were indeed prodigies like Huaijian, Moon in the Well, Ruined Star, and Blood Spear. In the Celestial realm, Ling Han felt that Ji Wuming could barely be considered one. However, from the previous situation, he was still a bit lacking. After all, the level of heaven and earth was different. However, if the Empress and Niu could control void energy, they did not need to. As long as they could extract void energy to refine themselves, they would definitely be able to greatly increase their battle prowess and reach 11 on their evolution index. Ling Han casually punched out, and although he did not use his full strength, he easily suppressed Mo. After a few dozen moves, he had the absolute advantage and easily won, advancing into the top 8. As for Mo, he was ranked second in the last expert rankings, so he could only be ranked 9th at most. One day later, the top 8 names were announced. Super Emperor stars like Huaijian were among them without any suspense. Right now, the ones with the highest hopes of becoming champions were Ling Han, Huaijian, Ruined Star, Moon in the Well, and Shuegu, the 5 Super Emperor stars. This was something that had never happened before. So many supreme geniuses had suddenly appeared. However, in the next round of battles, 2 of the Super Emperor stars would definitely meet, which meant that one of them would be eliminated. Who would it be? The 8 people drew lots again, and in the end, it was Ruined Star and Blood Spear. One of them would be eliminated first. There were still 5 days of rest, and everyone was filled with anticipation. Finally, there would be a battle between the Super Emperor stars. Although the Super Emperor stars had met before, that was a group battle, and there was a time limit. However, the expert rankings battles were different. There was no time limit, and there were no restrictions on moves. They could use all kinds of powerful moves without worrying about killing people. With the Ancestor King present, they would be able to stop it in time. Ling Han once again tormented himself to the point of suffocation. When the sixth day arrived, he was muddle-headed, yet he felt a vast and boundless power being absorbed by him. Void energy this time, he immediately reacted. Quang, the heavens and the earth responded, and thunderclouds gathered. Ling Han did not stop immediately. Instead, he engraved this state deeply in his mind before quickly stopping. He allowed Shuzi's energy to circulate a few rounds in his body, improving his physique before disappearing. Having lost its target, the heavenly tribulation also began to dissipate. This time, Ling Han was prepared. He had secluded himself outside the academy. Otherwise, he reckoned that no one would dare to stay in the Four Splendors Academy. It was too dangerous. They could be bombarded by the celestial tribulation at any moment. Who would have such a big heart? He slowly walked back to the academy, recalling in his mind. So that's how it is. He came to a sudden realization. Though there were formulas and models that could be learned and used when extracting void energy, the true process could only be understood and not explained. If it were not for the fact that Ling Han had once been the ruler of this heaven and earth, he would definitely not be able to extract void energy at this cultivation level, even if he had that scroll. The reason he hadn't succeeded before was because he wasn't a proper ruler of the world. He only had the strength of a quasi-Empyrean, barely reaching the threshold of the power of the world. The improvement of physical strength is far simpler than regulations. Then, I only need to improve my power to the pinnacle of the ascending origin tier. And it is equivalent to possessing the battle prowess of the consummate ascending origin tier, Ling Han thought. Unfortunately, power was a fixed value. The amount of power corresponded to the amount of battle prowess. Unlike cultivation level, Emperor stars, monarch tiers, and the like all had battle prowess that was severely inconsistent with cultivation level. So, while he uses vitality to measure the strength of a living being, and not cultivation level, as he muttered to himself, he had already returned to the academy, preparing for the battles of the top four. The first three battles were without suspense. Ling Han, Huaijian, and Moon and Well won smoothly, and the highlight of the fourth battle was currently in full swing. The two Super Emperor stars both exploded with astonishing battle prowess, fighting with all their might, not holding back at all. The strength of the two was infinitely close, so their battle was naturally incredibly intense. No victor could be determined, causing the battle to drag on like this. Luckily, this kind of situation had happened before, and the organizers naturally had a way to deal with it, which was to accelerate the flow of time. One day in the outside world was equivalent to 3 years inside. Su Xing and Xue Ge were evenly matched, and they had fought for a full 17 years before a victor was determined. Moreover, this was because they couldn't use weapons. As a member of the insect race, Xue Ge had an advantage. The barbs on his body were all super-killing weapons. Normally, they weren't much, but in a battle of equal strength, even the slightest advantage could be infinitely magnified. Naturally, Su Xing was unwilling to accept this. Some of his ultimate skills could only be used with divine weapons, and the two of them had agreed to fight again later. No matter what, Xue Ge became the last person in the top four. In the next round, Ling Han would fight Moon and Well, and Huaijian would fight Xue Ge. There were still 5 days of rest. Ling Han didn't waste a single second. He went to the wilderness and extracted the power of the world from the mysterious scroll. He continuously walked along the edge of the cliff, because if he lost even the slightest bit of control, the heavenly tribulation would really descend. How could he withstand it with his small body? Hiding in the Black Tower indeed. A ninth heaven celestial king couldn't break through the Black Tower, but the targeting of heaven and earth would never disappear. As long as Ling Han dared to come out, heaven and earth would continue to create the bombardment of heavenly tribulation until he faced the tribulation. That was naturally a dead end. There was another choice. and that was Ling Han leaving the foreign realm. However, there was no way back to the celestial realm, and he didn't grasp the corresponding regulations to go to the Xian'an plane. At present, he could only stay in the foreign realm. Playing with fire, Ling Han's battle prowess increased steadily. His physical strength had already reached the great perfection of the ascending origin tier. And added with his physique that had been tempered by the power of heaven and earth, he could display battle prowess of the great perfection of the ascending origin tier, even if he didn't use the power of regulations. Furthermore, this kind of battle prowess wasn't affected by the plane, even if he went to the Xian'an plane, or even a higher plane, and though he couldn't use regulations, his battle prowess could still be maintained at the great perfection of the ascending origin tier. No wonder the celestial venerables are so terrifying. They've already escaped the regulations, and their battle prowess won't weaken no matter where they go. 5 days of rest and recuperation passed very quickly, and the semi-finals began. 2 battles were going on at the same time. Ling Han faced Moon Well. This opponent's beauty was unparalleled, and her beauty was fresh and otherworldly. She was like a supreme celestial maiden, and he could only watch her from afar. He didn't even dare or bear to approach her. "I've been looking forward to this day for a long time," Moon Well said. Her voice was clear and melodious, and it was a kind of supreme enjoyment. Ling Han smiled calmly. "Make your move, I won't go easy on you." Moon Well was instantly enraged. She was a super emperor star, so when had she ever needed anyone to take pity on her? She was an invincible sword that could destroy everything. 10,000 transformation sword technique. She humped lightly and pushed out her slender hand. Countless silver swords shot out from her hand and swept towards Ling Han in a frenzy. "I say, sister, can't we have a proper spar?" Ling Han said with a smile. As he advanced aggressively, he swung his fists repeatedly, and every silver sword was directly shattered by him. He was like a demon king, and charged towards Moon Well. Chapter 2346. In the eyes of the crowd, Ling Han seemed to be taking liberties with Moon Well. There was no helping it. One was Big Black from the demon race, while the other was Pink Jiao from the angel race. When the two of them stood together, they were like a beast and a beauty. Now that Ling Han was teasing her, it seemed like he was taking liberties with her. Moon Well's pretty face was cold, and she kept attacking. One attack after another turned into heaven-piercing sword cheese. She was like a goddess of war, beautiful yet dangerous, charming yet heroic. Even the males from the demon race, the insect race, and the holy beast race could not take their eyes off her. If the outcome of the battle was decided by the spectators, there was no doubt that Moon Well would be the winner. Ling Han went all out in this battle. His evolution index had already reached 11, and under the current conditions, there was probably no more room for him to improve. However, if he were to exchange blows with a powerhouse like Moon Well, he might be able to break through the shackles and open up a stronger path to evolution. All sorts of regulations were at his fingertips, turning into the forms of various weapons and slashing at Moon Well. Some of them were wrapped around his fists and blasted at Moon Well. His powerful physique also played a great role. He could ignore most of Moon Well's attacks, which allowed him to free up more energy to focus on his attacks. The result was that Moon Well's counterattacks were reduced, which made his attacks even more violent. From the looks of it, Ling Han already had the upper hand, and he was basically the only one who could attack. However, both he and Moon Well knew that the outcome of the battle was far from being decided. This was because although Moon Well's counterattacks had decreased, the quality had increased. Either he did not attack, or he attacked with the fiercest attacks. Even Ling Han did not dare to underestimate him. However, as the battle continued, Ling Han became more and more proficient. His cultivation had improved too quickly, but the number of battles he had fought was too few. This was not a problem when he was fighting against Thearchs or even Emperor stars. However, Moon Well was too strong. As long as he revealed the slightest flaw in his attacks, his opponent would be able to seize the opportunity to target him. He would either easily dodge or launch a thunderous counterattack. This forced Ling Han to continuously improve himself, causing him to reveal fewer and fewer flaws, reaching a state of perfection. The stronger he was, the more embarrassed Moon and Well was. The number of times she counterattacked decreased, and she finally revealed a shocked expression. If this went on, she would lose. Lose in a battle between equals. She had never considered the possibility that she would lose. This was something that she had almost no affinity with. But now, it appeared in her mind. She was unwilling to accept this. She was already a super emperor star. So how could she be inferior to Ling Han? It was probably because she couldn't use her weapon. She attributed the reason to this. She had a 9 Lotus grade artifact, which could withstand her battle prowess that exceeded her cultivation level. But now that she was using her fingers as a sword, how could her physique withstand such mighty power? She was sure that her fingers would be blasted into smithereens before she could even make her move. Her defeat was becoming more and more obvious, but she had no intention of losing too badly. She decisively withdrew from the battle and said, "I've lost." Ling Han wasn't done yet. He felt that there was still room for improvement in his combat strength. He couldn't help but say, "Why don't we spar again at my place?" When Moon and Well heard this, she instantly blushed. She scolded him, "Scum," and swiftly left. Spar at his place, no matter how it sounded. These words sounded so ambiguous. The spectators, especially Moon and Well's admirers, were all furious. They wanted nothing more than to rush up and beat this daring guy into mincemeat. He was too shameless, too vulgar, too direct. Ling Han was confused. He was clearly very serious in challenging her to a battle, not asking for a knight. So why did he have such a big reaction? Dominating victory. As the referee's voice fell, Ling Han also left the battle platform. As for whether Huaijian or Shuige would win, he didn't care at all. In any case, no matter who the opponent was, they couldn't stop him from reaching the top. For the sake of the ancient battle beast's egg, he seized the time to continue tempering himself, but soon discovered that he had reached a bottleneck. His power stopped at the peak stage of ascending origin tier, unable to advance any further. It seemed that his cultivation level still affected the upper limit of his power. He could only come back after breaking through. The victor of the battle between Huaijian and Shuige had just been decided, and the prodigies of the new generation ultimately couldn't put on a good show of a counterattack. Huaijian was slightly stronger and won the battle, but both sides had paid a very heavy price. That ancestral king of the Four Splendors Academy spoke and announced that the finals would be delayed for a month before starting. There had never been such a precedent in the past, but that ancestral king said that it was for the sake of letting the 2 great emperor stars shine brilliantly. And the reason was also fair and just. But everyone knew that Huaijian was about to be taken as a disciple by a heavenly venerable, and the reward for the first place in the elite ranking this time was also set up for him. So no matter what, they had to ensure that he reached the top. Otherwise they would make that heavenly venerable unhappy. Who dared to make a heavenly venerable unhappy? Ling Han, however, didn't mind. He also wanted to battle Huaijian in his strongest state, and speed up the consolidation of his cultivation level. That way, he could advance to the ascending origin tier as soon as possible. After advancing into the ascending origin tier, under the tempering of the power of heaven and earth, would he be able to compete with celestial kings? There was no need for 8th heaven or 9th heaven, just 1st heaven would be fine. Ling Han thought that he was very modest, but he didn't know that if others knew of his thoughts like this, they would definitely scold him for being delusional. What kind of existence was a celestial king? They were on par with regulations. Even the strongest ascending origin tier emperor star could not possibly surpass the chasm of celestial king. This was absolute, and there were no exceptions. Yet Ling Han didn't think so. The power of heaven and earth was superior to regulations, so it was possible that he would possess battle prowess that could rival celestial kings in the ascending origin tier. Just wait and see. He didn't continue cultivating, but instead began to concoct alchemical pills. He was only a sliver away from the 9th refinement, and he only had to cross over, and he would be able to advance into the level of celestial king tier in a certain aspect. A dozen or so days later, good news arrived. Hunyao and the Empress had both broken through to Mystery 11 and possessed the strongest battle prowess of a mortal palace tier. However, bewitching Maiden Rose still couldn't break through. Even if she had an endless supply of ancestral king blood and celestial pills, how could the step of ascending origin tier be easily taken? She had to transform origin power into source power. What was source power? The source power of heaven and earth was closer to the level of regulations, so it was naturally difficult to achieve. Another 7 days passed, and Huaijian's injuries were completely healed, and he had recovered to peak battle prowess. Thus, that ancestral king gave the order, and the final battle began. This was naturally very unfair, and was extremely biased towards Huaijian. Why did it matter if he was ready? What if Ling Han was still trying to break through some crucial barrier? It was useless. Behind Huaijian stood a heavenly venerable, so who could not be partial to him? Thus, the final battle, after being delayed for a dozen or so days, began a few days earlier. Ling Han arrived accompanied by Hunyao and the other 2 women. Seven Frost, Yuan, and the others were already waiting there. This battle was of great importance. If Ling Han could win, then even if the 100 Battles Academy didn't obtain the title of first in the academy, they would still be able to hold their heads high and be superior to everyone else. Seven Frost and Yuan did not give any encouragement to Ling Han. They knew that he was fighting for their sake this time, and would definitely do his best. In the end, between Ling Han and Huaijian, who exactly was the strongest emperor star? Chapter 2348. Just now, Ling Han seemed to have been affected by the explosion of the divine spear. But in fact, he had used the spatial rules to transfer the power of the explosion to the light area, allowing the spear and shield to kill each other. Huaijian was astonished. How did Ling Han grasp so many laws? For geniuses like them, their cultivation base improved rapidly. Breaking through the barriers between realms was as easy as drinking water. Hence, they did not have the time to cultivate other laws. Just cultivating a single law was enough. Raising one's realm was the most important thing. Without a realm, even if one had 8 Lotus Imperial Stars, one would still be defeated by a 2-leaf or 3-leaf cultivator. Only after becoming an ancestral monarch would one no longer be able to advance triumphantly, no matter how much of a genius one was. That was why one would cultivate other laws. Firstly, it was to comprehend by analogy and obtain inspiration for a breakthrough. Secondly, it was to increase one's own strength. Someone like Ling Han is a complete loafer. Ling Han smiled. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Eat my fist. He punched out. Boom! The space was compressed and stacked layer by layer as he blasted towards Huaijian. This punch was not just a counterattack. It also pushed the area controlled by Ling Han forward by 1 li. Huaijian snorted and made a gesture with his right hand. Suddenly, countless rays of light appeared and flew toward the shattered space. Boom! Ling Han's counterattack was blocked this time. The strength of the 2 prodigies was earth-shattering. Everyone was curious. In the beginning, Ling Han had fallen into an absolute disadvantage in terms of the rules, but now he was counterattacking step by step, turning the advantage of the 2 sides to 8-2. Though he was still at a disadvantage, he had turned the tables by who knew how much compared to the previous one-sided situation. More importantly, who knew if Ling Han still had more rules that he had yet to activate. Huaijian's arms shook, and a divine sword of light appeared in each of his fists. They were completely formed by laws, so no one would dare to use treasured weapons here. His figure charged out, bringing along boundless light as he launched a fierce attack on Ling Han. After a few probings, he realized that it was impossible to defeat Ling Han with long-range attacks. That would give Ling Han enough time to react. Only close combat could pose a real threat to Ling Han. Ling Han let out a long howl and punched out furiously. The 2 heavens' favorites clashed. One was shrouded in light like a god of war, while the other was shrouded in darkness, slaughter, and space. He was like a demon king that was about to wreak havoc in the world. The more rules one grasped, the stronger one's combat strength would be. However, it was not a simple addition. Rather, it was far from this number. For example, If the power of a slaughter law was 1 and the power of a space law was also 1, then the power of 2 laws would be about 1, 2 or 1, 3. This was also why everyone would focus on one type of rule, because it was not good to bite off more than one could chew. Huai Jian, on the other hand, focused on light rules and cultivated this rule to an astonishing level. His entire body was intertwined with light, and his battle prowess was terrifying. He completely suppressed Ling Han, and even the stacking of 3 rules was no match for him. Ling Han was calm. Was this his limit? Of course not. He activated another rule, and boundless lightning spread out. His battle prowess increased by a large margin, and correspondingly, the area of light shrank by about half a kilometer. Now it was 7-3. Everyone exclaimed repeatedly. Ling Han had indeed grasped other rules. 3 rules was actually not his limit. Was 4 rules enough? No matter how many rules you've grasped in front of me, everything is empty, Huai Jian said proudly. He pressed his hands against the void and boom! A divine sword of light instantly appeared in the sky and smashed down heavily at Ling Han. Ling Han laughed loudly. He activated his 5th rule. This time it was the metal-type rule. A cold, sharp aura radiated from his fist. Bang! He punched out, and the divine sword of light instantly shattered. Golden light spread out, and the area of light shrank again, retreating to a range of 6 kilometers. They were about to be evenly matched. Everyone was speechless. Just how many rules had Ling Han grasped? Huai Jian was also speechless. He had only said those words out of anger. Who would have thought that Ling Han had really grasped even more rules? Even he felt that this was troublesome. Although each additional rule that Ling Han used would only make him stronger in terms of rules, and his battle prowess would not increase by much, Huai Jian still had to guard against Ling Han. If Ling Han truly grasped all the rules, then the quantitative change would become a qualitative change, and it would be enough to contend with him. Ling Han used his tyrant fist and began a large-scale counterattack. When he activated his wood-type rule, the area of light only occupied half of the area. At least in terms of the situation, Ling Han was no longer at a disadvantage. And when more rules were activated, the area of light was suppressed instead. In the end, it was only left with an area of 10 meters, the same as Ling Han's. This was truly a 30-year cycle of fortune. Everyone was speechless. Who could believe this scene? Although the outcome of the battle had yet to be decided, at least in terms of momentum, Ling Han already had an absolute advantage. Of course, Huai Jian was definitely not defeated. Just like how Ling Han was at a disadvantage in terms of momentum, he was not afraid of Huai Jian at all. It was the same now. Huai Jian was very surprised. Ling Han had actually grasped the 5 elements: thunder, massacre, darkness and space. A total of 9 rules. Where did he get so much energy? This thought only flashed through his mind, and he immediately erupted with all his strength, attacking Ling Han. The 2 great geniuses clashed, stacking their ultimate moves, and both bloomed with their own brilliance. Ling Han had some ultimate moves that he had not used, such as the time rules, which could be used to win and reverse life and death. Huai Jian was believed to be the same. This person was a rare genius in this era, and many ancestral kings even thought that he had a high chance of becoming a celestial venerable. Who would believe that such a person did not have a powerful trump card? One sword descends from the heavens, destroys gods and shatters souls. As expected, Huai Jian quickly used his ultimate move. A sword light streaked across the sky, shaking the 9 heavens. This was a terrifying ultimate move. As soon as the sword was unleashed, the light rules became corporeal and appeared in the sky. It even turned into the shape of a rune, increasing the power of the sword light as it slashed towards Ling Han. Moon and Well, Blood Spear, and Ruin Star, the 3 Super Emperor stars, could not help but look shocked. If they went to receive this attack, they would most likely have to pay a great price. Huai Jian was actually this powerful. However, Huai Jian revealed a dissatisfied expression, because this sword was unleashed through his hand, and not the sword that he was born with. Otherwise its power would have been doubled. It had finally come. The battle intent in Ling Han's heart boiled like fire. He pointed out with a finger, and everything stopped. Time rules. Huaijian's expression changed. No matter what plane it was, the time rules were the most important and basic rules. Without the time rules, the plane would be completely chaotic. How could there be any martial art experts? Bang bang bang. Ling Han punched out a few more times, and the sword light instantly shattered. The pillars formed from the light rules also shattered, and the runes in the sky lost their support and loudly fell. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 2349. Huaijian's expression was solemn. Even when facing a prodigy like Shuege, he was still confident that he could win. But now, he felt a sense of loss that he had never felt before. He couldn't be sure anymore. This kind of hesitation made him feel terrified. He, the #1 Emperor Star, actually felt terrified, but immediately after, a strong desire to fight rose in his heart. Like flames, it erupted from the top of his head and shot up into the sky. This kind of battle was what he yearned for. Otherwise, he would have already known the outcome of the battle, and it would just be a mere formality. This caused his blood to cool down, and also caused him to be gentle and refined, as if nothing could anger him. A long time ago he wasn't like this. He was filled with passion and fighting spirit. He longed to challenge a strong opponent. Before he could surpass himself, he had buried himself in cultivation. And the moment of victory, the wonderful feeling was indescribable. This was a true battle. This was the original reason why he had embarked on the path of martial art and desired to become stronger. Huaijian laughed heartily. His aura was majestic, as if he had been reborn from the ashes. His battle prowess had actually increased by a large margin. This was a change in his state of mind. It made him reborn. Actually, he could have advanced to 9 Lotus long ago. However, firstly, he had to fight this battle for the academy. Secondly, he always felt that his condition wasn't perfect. Now that his state of mind was tense and relaxed, he knew where the last bit of inadequacy was. Under the repair, his battle prowess was naturally perfect. Such a Huaijian was too terrifying. Every move he made was filled with sword qi. Even when he opened and closed his eyes, a pair of treasured swords would fall out, slashing the heavens and the earth. Ling Han was shocked. He didn't expect such a shocking change to happen to Huaijian. But after the shock, he was filled with fighting spirit. An opponent like this was too rare. He let out a long roar and fully unleashed his battle prowess. All sorts of rules were at his fingertips, extremely mysterious. This wasn't just piling up rules. When an attack came, he used the defensive-oriented rule of Earth to counter it. When attacking, the metal rule and the slaughter rule would link together. In terms of movement techniques, the space rule was, of course, unique. In terms of using rules, Ling Han was already close to perfection. Under the pressure of a strong enemy like Huaijian, Ling Han was speeding up towards perfection. The spectators were all dazzled by this sight, and they even felt an urge to clasp their heads and exclaim in shock. Regardless of whether it was Huaijian or Ling Han, such prodigies should both be unique, yet now two had appeared. Was it a love-hate relationship, and only one of them could advance to the heavenly venerable tier? Or was it a mutual encouragement, and both of them would become heavenly venerable tiers? On the battlefield, the two of them had forgotten about it for a moment, and were focused on fighting with all their might. At this time, glory, rewards, and even victory were all forgotten. There was only one word in their minds: fight. They fought until their muscles were exhausted, and their bones were shattered. The two geniuses were incredibly resplendent and released their own light, causing others to pale in comparison. Only Ji Shuege and the other 2 Super Emperor stars were filled with battle intent, vowing to surpass the two of them. Everyone else was mediocre, and even the Emperor stars felt a sense of helplessness. Fight, 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 fight to the last bit of strength. Ling Han and Huaijian were evenly matched. Even with the acceleration of time, 10 days had passed in the outside world, but they were still fighting fiercely. This was a 1,000-fold acceleration of time. 10 days in the outside world was more than 20 years inside. The two geniuses fought fiercely at the beginning, but now their speed was getting slower and slower, and they would only make a single move after a long time. This was not because they were exhausted, but because they had used up all their techniques. Now they were fighting while thinking of new techniques. This was a test of their imagination, creativity, and adaptability. Whoever's imagination, creativity, and adaptability could not keep up, the battle would be decided in an instant. At this time, the people outside actually did not care much about who would win between Ling Han and Huaijian. They had already proven their strength, and were fully deserving of being the twin prodigies of the Outlander realm. They could shine brightly for an era. Perhaps in another few billion years, the two of them would each go to a battlefield and lead a group of heroes. One would conquer the immortal domain, while the other would carry the banner against the Xian'anai plain. After more than 20 years of intense battle, the two great prodigies were riddled with wounds. Though they had mastered recovery techniques with astonishing effects, because the battle was too fierce, their recovery speed was far from being able to keep up. At this time, Ling Han's powerful physique had a huge advantage. The injuries he had sustained were slightly lighter, and the speed of his recovery was slightly faster. Although it was only a little, as they continued to accumulate, it became an advantage, and it slowly became a victory. On the 13th day, Huaijian's body swayed after a head-on clash with Ling Han. He sat on the ground, no longer able to continue fighting. His injuries were too severe. A murderous intent rose in Ling Han's heart. Huaijian was too terrifying, and he might really become a celestial sovereign in the future. This was definitely not good news for the immortal domain. He had an urge to kill his opponent, but they had fought for so long, and he appreciated each other. Secondly, there was the ancestral king here, so it was not good for him to do so. Thinking of this, his murderous intent slowly dissipated. "Victory," the ancestral king said, his voice calm and without the slightest fluctuation. It was practically impossible to pry into the ancestral king's emotions. The seal on the battlefield opened. Before Ling Han walked out, he saw dark clouds rolling in the sky, and terrifying lightning appeared. Heavenly tribulation. He looked towards Huaijian in surprise. This guy had broken through after this battle. He was really audacious. This person's battle prowess was actually not inferior to his, but his physique was inferior. So he made a mistake in the end. Of course, Ling Han did not use his physical strength. This was at the peak stage of the ascending origin tier, and was a level stronger than his power of regulation. Now that Huaijian was riddled with wounds, he actually dared to break through. If this was not audacious, what was? But if he could still survive under such circumstances, it would be a huge boost to Huaijian's confidence, or even a rebirth of his mental state. As expected of Huaijian, Ling Han shook his head. After leaving the battle area, the first thing he did was to head straight for the ancient battle beast egg. It was now his. "Tyrant, I want to battle with you again." Moon and Well walked over gracefully. There was already a treasured sword in her hand. It was like colored glass, exuding a chilling aura. With a sword in hand, she was in her strongest state. "I also want to battle with you," Shuaigu said solemnly. He had transformed into a bald man, and his skin was blood red and extremely smooth, guaranteed to not have a single pore. Su Xing also stood at the side. He did not speak, but the fighting spirit in his eyes explained everything. Ling Han put away the battle beast egg, and then cast a vigilant look at the three. "You want to steal my battle beast egg? Fall." Moon and Well, and the other two had the urge to beat up Ling Han. Did they have to go so far? 3 days later, Sunset Mountains. Moon and Well left these words, and then swaggered off. Shuaigu and Su Xing were beaten by Moon and Well, so they could only rub their noses, and did not issue a challenge. It was hard to say who would win between Ling Han and Moon and Well, and even if Ling Han won, he might be seriously injured, so it would be an unfair victory. They wanted to win against Ling Han in his strongest state. Ling Han returned to Hunyeo, and the other two girls sighed. Immediately, Qi Shuang and Yuan looked extremely excited, while Sun Feng and the others' faces were dark. They naturally did not want to see Ling Han so glorious. "Niu wants to eat the egg." Hunyeo stared at Ling Han, saliva already flowing. Chapter 2350. Hearing Hunyeo say that, Seven Frost and Yuan were both shocked and hurriedly stopped her, afraid that Ling Han would get hot-headed and roast the battle beast egg and eat it. Once it hatched, it would definitely become ancestral king level, which was equivalent to an ancestral tool with its own consciousness. How precious! Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Even if Seven Frost and Yuan didn't stop him, he wouldn't take out the battle beast egg for Hunyo to eat. Be good, this egg doesn't taste good. After some persuasion, Hunyo reluctantly gave up on the idea of eating the egg. They returned, made some preparations, and were about to return. Ling Han, on the other hand, asked for leave from Seven Frost and Yuan with the excuse of traveling the world. This put the two of them in a very difficult position. Ling Han obtaining the first place in the elite ranking was a great honor for the 100 Battle Academy. And when they returned, they naturally had to hold a special celebration. The two of them had led the academy well, so naturally, it would also affect their faces, and they would receive great honor. However, if Ling Han didn't return, the effect would be greatly reduced. They tried everything to persuade him, but Ling Han made up his mind. His strength was there anyway. Even if Seven Frost and Yuan used violence, he could easily break through. Ling Han didn't hatch the battle beast egg, but first went into seclusion and meditated, completely digesting what he learned from the battle with Huaijian. 3 days later, he went to the Sunset Mountains for the appointment. Moon in the Well was already waiting there. One person, one sword, magnificent. The nearby mountains were also filled with people. Some didn't even have a place to stand, and could only fly in the air. You're late, Moon in the Well said discontentedly when Ling Han arrived. I'm too popular now, and too many people greeted me on the way. I'd be embarrassed if I didn't reply. I was afraid people would say I'm famous and arrogant, so I'm late, Ling Han said with a smile. Moon in the Well's pretty face darkened. This guy really talked nonsense. She clearly knew that Ling Han didn't greet anyone on the way here. He was obviously messing with her. She snorted, shook her sword and said, My sword is a 9 Lotus level treasure. You can also use weapons, lest people say I'm bullying you. Okay. Ling Han nodded, and he unhesitatingly drew out the divine demon sword. He gave it a light shake, and the blade of the sword instantly released a long cry. It was as if an invincible King Tyr was issuing a warning. Suddenly, the glazed sword in Jingzhong Suki's hand twisted like a snake, as if it had encountered a terrifying demon and was trembling in fear. Moon in the Well was greatly alarmed. This was her precious artifact, and it was connected to her mind. She could feel that the sword in her hand was afraid, and the object of its fear was precisely the sword in Ling Han's hand. Fuck, the fight hasn't even started and you're already scared? Moon in the Well was both angry and shocked. She hurriedly shook her sword, wanting to fight. Pa! A crack actually appeared in the middle of the sword in her hand, and then it rapidly expanded, and then it broke into two. This Moon in Jingzhong was completely speechless. Because of her fear of the sword in Ling Han's hand, her glass sword had shattered itself. They would rather shatter themselves than fight. What kind of suppression was this? An ancestral artifact, she said with difficulty. Only an ancestral artifact could suppress a 9 Lotus bejeweled treasure. She did not even have the right to fight it. What the hell was this fight about? Unarmed, she was no match for Ling Han in the first place. At first, she had wanted to use her precious artifact to turn the tables, but the result was even worse. She had already been defeated before the fight had even started. This guy was too lucky, wasn't he? He actually had an ancestral artifact. Ling Han shook his sword lightly, smiled, and asked, Do you still want to fight? Moon in the Well was speechless. She turned around, flapped her wings, and left. Unless she could obtain an ancestral artifact, she could not stand against Ling Han at all. The problem was how precious was an ancestral artifact. Putting aside obtaining it, who would lend it to her? She'd better wait until she became an ancestral King Tyr. Otherwise, she would always be suppressed by Ling Han's ancestral artifact, and would not be able to turn the tables at all. Everyone on the mountain was speechless. Who would have thought that the intense battle that they were anticipating would actually end in such a manner? Ling Han put away the divine demon sword and slowly left. When he returned to his residence, Ling Han decided to first bind the battle beast egg with his blood, and then let it slowly hatch. Meanwhile, he would continue to wander around in the foreign realm. When he had accumulated enough experience, he would break through to the ascending origin tier. Inside the Black Tower, he held the battle beast egg in his left hand and used his teeth to bite the index finger of his right hand. Instantly, blood dripped down and sprinkled onto the battle beast egg. He chanted in his mind as he dipped his finger in the blood and began to draw on the egg. This was a talisman that could help him connect with this beast egg and form a master-servant ritual with the life within it. When the talisman was drawn, there was suddenly a frighteningly ferocious might that charged towards Ling Han, as if an incredibly frightening ferocious beast was opening its giant mouth at him. Ling Han discovered that he was in a dark space. He couldn't see the sky, nor could he see the ground. There was only a stretch of nothingness, but very soon, a colossal creature appeared in front of him. It was in the form of a ferocious beast, but only stood on its 2 legs. These 2 hind legs were long and strong, and took up more than half of its body. But its 2 front legs were pitifully small, shrinking at the position of its chest. However, its mouth was really huge, and the 2 rows of teeth that were revealed were as if they were forged from blades, exuding a sinister light. What kind of monster was this? Ling Han could only say that he knew too little about the species of the foreign realm, but there was one thing that he was sure of, and that was that this beast was not simple. Pa 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 pa. The monster moved its legs, and like a human, it sprinted towards Ling Han. It opened its mouth and boom, a frightening sound wave exploded out, charging towards Ling Han. Ling Han instantly understood. The present him was only a spiritual body, and the monster in front of him was also a battle beast that had not yet hatched, as expected of an existence that was destined to become an ancestral king. It was extremely fierce, and even before it was born, it already had a peerless ferocious might. It was not willing to be enslaved by Ling Han, so it started a fierce battle with Ling Han in this spiritual world. If it could seriously injure Ling Han, it could turn the tables, and Ling Han would be the servant, and it would be the master. This kind of master-slave contract was originally a 2-way street, and the strong were respected. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly. This battle beast was indeed destined to become an ancestral king, but he was someone who was destined to become a sky sovereign. He met it fearlessly, and endless ferocious flames burned all over his body. When it came to killing, who was he afraid of? Pung. The man and the beast collided with each other, and then both of them bounced off. This was a confrontation on the spiritual level, and had nothing to do with physique. The battle beast was born for battle, and it was crazy for battle. Although it had not yet been born, its ferocious might was already monstrous. It immediately ran back on its 2 large legs, and opened its mouth, biting towards Ling Han's neck. Ling Han's physique was astonishing, and his soul was not much inferior. Similarly, with a long roar he rolled back, and his attacks were like rain. Pung pung pung. 1 man and 1 beast fought fiercely. The battle beast was incomparably ferocious, and it opened its mouth to bite randomly. Although its claws were small, their destructive power was extremely shocking, and a single touch could seriously injure Ling Han. This was a spiritual body, and there would not be any obvious injuries, but it would make them weak. Whoever was weak to the extreme first would reveal the core of their soul, and the seed of enslavement would be easily planted. Of course, Ling Han was not inferior. He punched out furiously, and the battle beast howled again and again, and its figure rapidly faded away. He had victory in his hands. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.